Picture this. 70 million years ago, long before humans walked the earth, there existed a place so extraordinary that it sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel. An isolated island floating in ancient seas, where giants became miniatures, where evolution took a completely different path, and where the impossible became reality. This wasn't some mythical land from a storybook. This was Hațeg Island, and it was absolutely real. What if I told you that in what we now call Romania, there once lived dinosaurs the size of ponies instead of school buses? What if massive long-necked sauropods, the very creatures we imagine as towering giants, were actually no bigger than modern rhinoceros? And what if flying reptiles with wingspans that could eclipse small aircraft dominated skies above a world where everything was scaled down to miniature proportions? Welcome to the most fascinating evolutionary experiment nature ever conducted. I'm about to take you on a journey back in time to explore one of paleontology's most remarkable discoveries, an ancient island ecosystem that completely rewrote our understanding of how life adapts to isolation. By the end of this video series, you'll understand not just how these incredible creatures lived, but why their story matters so much for our understanding of evolution itself. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how mind-blowing this place really was. Imagine walking through a prehistoric landscape where the rules of size seemed completely reversed, where crocodiles developed legs for walking on land, where tiny mammals with blood-red teeth scurried through undergrowth, and where pterosaurs grew to unprecedented sizes while dinosaurs shrank to unprecedented smallness. This wasn't just an island. This was evolution's laboratory. The story of Hațeg begins in the warm, shallow seas of the Cretaceous period. Europe wasn't the continent we know today. Instead of solid land masses, much of what would become modern Europe existed as scattered islands dotting tropical seas. These weren't your typical desert islands. They were lush, subtropical paradises covered in dense forests of ferns, early flowering plants, and towering conifers. Rivers carved through landscapes, creating floodplains that supported incredibly diverse communities of life. One of these islands, located in what we now call central Romania, was destined to become one of the most important paleontological sites in the world. The Hațeg Island ecosystem was unlike anything that exists today. It was a world shaped by geographic isolation, limited resources, and evolutionary pressures that would create some of the most unusual creatures ever to walk, fly, or crawl across our planet. Now here's where things get really interesting. When large animals find themselves isolated on islands with limited space and resources, something remarkable happens. Over countless generations, they begin to shrink. This process, called insular dwarfism, is like nature's own version of downsizing. It's not just random, it's a brilliant evolutionary strategy. Smaller animals need less food, require less territory, and can thrive in environments where their giant relatives would starve. But Hațeg Island took this concept to an extreme that still amazes scientists today. We're not talking about animals getting slightly smaller. We're talking about dramatic transformations that created an entirely miniaturized version of the age of dinosaurs. Sauropods that should have been massive became modest. Theropods that should have been terrifying became compact. It was like someone had put the entire dinosaur world through a shrinking machine. The evidence for this extraordinary ecosystem comes from fossil deposits that have been preserved with remarkable detail. These aren't just random bone fragments scattered through rock formations. These are complete communities of animals preserved together, showing us exactly how this unique ecosystem functioned. Every fossil tells part of a larger story about adaptation, survival, and the incredible creativity of evolution when faced with unusual challenges. What makes Hațeg Island even more fascinating is that not every animal followed the same evolutionary path. While most large animals became smaller, some creatures actually grew larger. Certain pterosaurs, the flying reptiles of the Mesozoic, reached gigantic proportions. These weren't your average flying creatures. These were monsters of the sky with wingspans that could rival small aircraft. The contrast was striking. Tiny dinosaurs scurrying below, while giant flying reptiles soared overhead. This wasn't just about size changes, though. The isolation of Hațeg Island led to the evolution of creatures with truly bizarre characteristics. Crocodiles developed features that helped them live on land rather than in water. Small mammals evolved teeth with iron-reinforced enamel that gave them a blood-red appearance. Amphibians developed unusual scale patterns that looked more like fish than typical amphibians. Every creature seemed to have its own unique adaptation to island life. The diversity of life on Hațeg Island was staggering. In addition to the famous dwarf dinosaurs, the fossil record reveals an incredible variety of other creatures. There were small, agile theropods with stocky limbs and unusual features. There were herbivorous dinosaurs with powerful jaws designed for processing tough, fibrous vegetation. There were tiny mammals no bigger than modern shrews, yet perfectly adapted to their ecological niches. But perhaps most remarkably, there were flying giants that dominated the skies above this miniature world. These pterosaurs weren't just large. They were among the largest flying creatures that ever lived. With skulls measuring over 2 meters in length and wings that could span more than 10 meters, they were the apex predators of their domain. How these massive creatures coexisted with the tiny ground-dwelling animals below is one of the most intriguing aspects of the Hațeg ecosystem. The plant life of Hațeg Island was equally fascinating. This wasn't just a simple tropical paradise. It was a complex ecosystem with multiple layers of vegetation. Ferns carpeted the forest floor, while towering conifers reached toward the sky. Early flowering plants were beginning to diversify, creating new ecological niches and food sources. The entire landscape was nourished by rivers and floodplains that created a mosaic of different habitats within the island's limited area. Understanding how these ecosystems functioned requires us to think differently about prehistoric life. We often imagine the age of dinosaurs as a time of massive creatures dominating vast landscapes. But Hațeg Island shows us that evolution is far more creative and adaptable than we might expect. When faced with constraints, limited space, limited resources, geographic isolation, life finds ways not just to survive, but to thrive in completely unexpected ways. The preservation of these fossils is itself a remarkable story. The gentle hills of modern Romania's Hațeg Basin hold within their rocks a complete snapshot of this ancient world. Fossil formations like the Satra Formation have yielded not just individual bones, but entire skeletons, complete with details about soft tissues, behavior, and even diseases that affected these ancient creatures. Scientists today walk through these same hills, carefully excavating fossils that provide windows into this lost world. Each discovery adds another piece to our understanding of how evolution works under extreme conditions. These aren't just academic curiosities. They're fundamental insights into the processes that shape life on our planet. The implications of Hațeg Island extend far beyond paleontology. Modern islands around the world show similar patterns of evolutions, with animals becoming larger or smaller, depending on their ecological circumstances. By studying ancient examples like Hațeg, we gain insights into how modern ecosystems might respond to isolation, climate change, and other environmental pressures. What's particularly striking about Hațeg Island is how it challenges our assumptions about prehistoric life. We tend to think of the Mesozoic as an era of giants, but Hațeg shows us that even in the age of dinosaurs, life could be surprisingly small and delicate. These weren't failed evolutionary experiments. They were highly successful adaptations to specific environmental conditions. The story of how these creatures lived, reproduced, and interacted with each other is still being written as new fossils are discovered and new analytical techniques are developed. Advanced imaging technologies now allow scientists to peer inside fossilized bones, revealing details about growth rates, metabolism, and life history strategies. Three-dimensional reconstructions help us understand how these animals moved and behaved in their ancient environment. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Hațeg Island is what it tells us about the resilience and adaptability of life itself. Faced with isolation and limited resources, evolution didn't simply produce smaller versions of mainland animals. Instead, it created an entirely unique ecosystem with its own rules, its own food webs, and its own spectacular array of creatures found nowhere else on Earth. This ancient island ecosystem represents one of evolution's most creative experiments, a natural laboratory where the normal rules of size and ecology were completely rewritten. As we delve deeper into the specific creatures that called Hațeg Island home, we'll discover stories of adaptation that are stranger than fiction and more remarkable than anything our imagination could conjure. The miniature dinosaurs of Hațeg Island weren't just evolutionary curiosities. They were sophisticated, successful animals, perfectly adapted to their unique world. Their story is our story too, revealing the incredible capacity of life to find new solutions to old problems, to thrive in the face of constraints, and to create beauty and complexity even in the most unlikely circumstances. The fossil record of Hațeg Island reads like a catalog of evolutionary experiments, each more extraordinary than the last. When paleontologists first began uncovering these ancient remains in the hills of Transylvania, they couldn't quite believe what they were finding. Bones that should have belonged to massive creatures were coming from animals no larger than modern farm animals. Skulls that should have measured several meters were instead compact and delicate. It was as if someone had taken the entire Mesozoic world and compressed it into a miniature version of itself. Among the most remarkable inhabitants of this ancient island were the sauropods, those iconic long-necked giants that we typically imagine as the largest land animals that ever lived. On mainland continents during the Cretaceous, these creatures regularly reached lengths of 30 meters or more, their necks stretching toward the sky like living skyscrapers. But on Hațeg Island, evolution had different plans entirely. Picture a sauropod standing barely 2 meters tall at the shoulder, weighing less than a modern automobile. These weren't juvenile animals that died before reaching maturity. Detailed analysis of their bone structure reveals that these were fully grown adults. Their bones show the characteristic features of mature animals, with fully fused joints and dense bone tissue that only develops in older individuals. Yet they were smaller than many modern elephants. This dramatic size reduction wasn't just about proportional scaling. These island sauropods developed unique characteristics that set them apart from their mainland relatives. Some evolved bony armor plates embedded in their skin, a feature virtually unknown among their giant cousins. This armor might have provided protection in an environment where normal-size-based defenses were no longer effective. When you can't intimidate predators through sheer bulk, alternative strategies become essential. The herbivorous dinosaurs of Hațeg Island faced unique challenges that shaped their evolution in fascinating ways. With limited plant resources available on their isolated home, these creatures had to become incredibly efficient at extracting nutrition from whatever vegetation was available. Their jaws evolved powerful musculature and specialized teeth designed for processing tough, fibrous plant material. They weren't just smaller versions of mainland species, they were highly specialized island adaptations. One particularly intriguing group of herbivores developed triangular skulls equipped with robust beaks, perfectly designed for cropping and processing the hardy vegetation that dominated their island ecosystem. These weren't delicate browsers. They were tough, compact animals built for making the most of limited food resources. Their growth patterns reveal extended juvenile periods and slower maturation rates, strategies that help them survive in resource-constrained environments. The carnivorous dinosaurs of Hațeg Island present an equally compelling story of adaptation. On the mainland, theropod dinosaurs were often massive apex predators, some reaching lengths of over 12 meters and wielding jaws capable of crushing bone. But on Hațeg Island, even the predators followed the island rule of size reduction. The largest carnivorous dinosaurs rarely exceeded 6 meters in length, and many were considerably smaller. These island predators weren't just scaled-down versions of their mainland relatives, though. They developed stocky, robust builds with powerful limbs adapted for their specific hunting environment. Their prey base consisted largely of the miniaturized herbivores sharing their island home, but this didn't make them any less formidable within their ecological context. A 6-meter predator might sound modest compared to mainland giants, but it was still the apex predator of its island ecosystem. What makes these predator-prey relationships even more fascinating is how they balanced within the constraints of island life. With limited space and resources, both predators and prey had to maintain sustainable population sizes. This led to evolutionary strategies focused on efficiency rather than raw power. Predators became more specialized in their hunting techniques, while prey animals developed enhanced defensive strategies beyond simple size. The diversity of these carnivorous dinosaurs reveals just how creative evolution can be when working within constraints. Some developed enlarged claws for specialized hunting techniques. Others evolved enhanced sensory capabilities to help them locate prey in dense island vegetation. Each species found its own unique solution to the challenge of being a successful predator in a miniaturized ecosystem. But perhaps the most mysterious group of dinosaurs on Hațeg Island were those whose exact identities remain uncertain even today. Fragmentary remains suggest the presence of small, bird-like theropods with unusual characteristics. These creatures might have been early relatives of birds, or they might have been specialized island adaptations of more traditional dinosaur lineages. Their exact nature continues to puzzle paleontologists, but their presence adds another layer of complexity to the Hațeg ecosystem. The behavior of these miniaturized dinosaurs would have been fascinating to observe. Without the luxury of intimidating size, many species likely relied on speed, agility, and intelligence to survive. Social behaviors might have become more important, with some species potentially forming cooperative groups for defense or foraging. The constraints of island life often lead to more sophisticated behavioral adaptations, and there's every reason to believe that Hațeg's dinosaurs were no exception. Reproduction strategies on Hațeg Island would have been particularly interesting. With limited space and resources, successful reproduction required careful timing and efficient use of available materials. Some species might have evolved extended parental care, ensuring that each offspring had the best possible chance of survival. Others might have developed more sophisticated nesting behaviors, creating protected environments for their young in the dense island vegetation. The plant eaters of Hațeg Island face perhaps the greatest challenges of all. Limited vegetation meant intense competition for food resources, driving the evolution of increasingly specialized feeding strategies. Some species developed powerful jaw muscles, capable of processing the toughest plant materials. Others evolved digestive systems that could extract maximum nutrition from poor-quality vegetation. Each adaptation represented a solution to the fundamental challenge of staying fed on an island with limited resources. These herbivorous dinosaurs weren't just passive consumers of vegetation, though. Their feeding behaviors would have significantly shaped the island's plant communities. Selective browsing pressure from different species likely influenced which plants thrived and which struggled to survive. This created a complex web of interactions between the island's flora and fauna, with each component influencing the evolution of all the others. The seasonal patterns on Hațeg Island added another layer of complexity to these interactions. Evidence suggests that the island experienced distinct wet and dry seasons, creating temporal variations in food availability. Herbivorous dinosaurs would have needed strategies for coping with these seasonal fluctuations, possibly including migration between different parts of the island or dietary flexibility that allowed them to exploit different food sources as seasons changed. Some of the most intriguing evidence from Hațeg Island comes from fossilized remains that preserve not just bones, but traces of behavior and lifestyle. Coprolites, fossilized feces, reveal details about diet and digestive processes. Nesting sites provide insights into reproductive behaviors. Even fossilized footprints help scientists understand how these animals moved through their environment and interacted with each other. The preservation conditions on Hațeg Island were exceptional, allowing scientists to recover details that are rarely preserved in fossil sites. Some specimens retain evidence of soft tissues, providing unprecedented insights into the anatomy and physiology of these ancient creatures. Others preserve evidence of diseases and injuries, offering glimpses into the daily struggles and challenges faced by individual animals. What emerges from all this evidence is a picture of a complex, dynamic ecosystem, where every species played a crucial role. The miniaturized dinosaurs of Hațeg Island weren't evolutionary failures or stunted versions of their mainland relatives. They were successful, sophisticated animals perfectly adapted to their unique environment. Their story demonstrates that evolution doesn't always favor the biggest or strongest. Sometimes it favors the most adaptable. The legacy of Hațeg Island's dinosaurs extends far beyond their own time and place. Their fossils provide crucial insights into how evolution responds to environmental constraints, offering lessons that are increasingly relevant in our modern world of habitat fragmentation and climate change. By understanding how these ancient creatures adapted to isolation and limited resources, we gain valuable perspectives on how modern species might respond to similar challenges. As we continue to explore the remarkable creatures that inhabited this ancient island, we'll discover that the dinosaurs were just one part of a much larger evolutionary story. Alongside them lived an extraordinary array of other animals, each with its own unique adaptations to island life. From giant flying reptiles that dominated the skies to tiny mammals that scurried through the undergrowth, Hațeg Island was home to one of the most diverse and unusual ecosystems in Earth's history. The flying reptiles of Hațeg Island present one of the most paradoxical aspects of this ancient ecosystem. While nearly every other large animal underwent dramatic size reduction, the pterosaurs, those magnificent flying reptiles of the Mesozoic, took the opposite evolutionary path. They became giants, absolute monsters of the prehistoric sky that dominated their miniaturized world like dragons from mythology. Imagine looking up at the Cretaceous skies above Hațeg Island and witnessing a creature with wings spanning over 10 meters, gliding silently overhead. This wasn't just large for a flying animal. This was one of the largest flying creatures that has ever existed on our planet. Its skull alone measured nearly 3 meters in length, longer than most modern cars. Yet this massive head was supported by a neck so powerful it could withstand forces several times the animal's own body weight. But here's where the story becomes truly remarkable. Despite having a skull that dwarfed those of most ground-dwelling predators, this aerial giant was still capable of powered flight. How is this possible? The answer lies in one of evolution's most elegant engineering solutions. The bones of these creatures were hollow, structured internally, like biological foam, similar to modern polystyrene, but infinitely more sophisticated. This revolutionary bone architecture provided incredible strength while maintaining the light weight essential for flight. The contrast between these aerial titans and the miniaturized ground fauna below creates one of the most striking ecological paradoxes in the fossil record. Picture the scene: tiny sauropods no bigger than modern cattle, browsing peacefully in fern-covered clearings, while overhead, pterosaurs with wingspans rivaling small aircraft patrolled their territory. It was like watching giants and miniatures coexist in the same impossible world. These flying behemoths weren't just impressive for their size. They were sophisticated predators perfectly adapted to their unique environment. Their necks, though relatively short compared to their body size, were incredibly robust and supported by extensive musculature. This wasn't the delicate neck of a typical flying creature. This was a powerful tool designed for handling large prey. Evidence suggests these aerial predators could tackle animals too large to swallow whole, placing them firmly at the apex of Hațeg Island's food web. The hunting strategies of these giant pterosaurs would have been unlike anything we see in modern ecosystems. With their massive size advantage over most ground-dwelling creatures, they likely employed a combination of ground-based stalking and aerial surveillance. Their powerful necks and robust skulls suggest they were capable of delivering devastating attacks to prey animals, possibly using their size to overwhelm victims through sheer force. But the pterosaurs of Hațeg Island weren't all giants. The fossil record reveals evidence of medium-sized species as well, suggesting that different pterosaur species had carved out distinct ecological niches. Some researchers propose that this size variation represents niche partitioning, different species specializing in different prey types or hunting strategies. The giants might have focused on larger ground prey, while their smaller relatives pursued different food sources entirely. This diversity of flying reptiles hints at a complex aerial ecosystem above Hațeg Island. Multiple pterosaur species sharing the same airspace would have required sophisticated behavioral adaptations to avoid direct competition. Different hunting territories, varied prey preferences, or even temporal separation of activities might have allowed these species to coexist successfully. The evolutionary pressures that led to pterosaur gigantism on Hațeg Island remain a subject of fascinating scientific debate. Unlike the resource constraints that drove most other animals toward smaller sizes, the pterosaurs seemed to benefit from conditions that favored increased body size. Perhaps the abundance of small prey animals created opportunities for aerial predators that could exploit this concentrated food source. Or maybe the lack of large ground-based competitors allowed pterosaurs to fill ecological roles typically occupied by terrestrial predators. The physiology of these giant flying reptiles presents numerous intriguing questions. How did they generate enough power for takeoff? How did they maneuver in flight despite their enormous size? How did they land safely without injuring themselves. Each of these challenges required sophisticated anatomical solutions that we're only beginning to understand through detailed study of their fossilized remains. Recent biomechanical analysis suggests that these pterosaurs were far more capable flyers than their size might suggest. Their wing structure, while massive, was optimized for efficient soaring flight. Like modern albatrosses or condors, they likely relied heavily on thermal currents and wind patterns to maintain flight, with minimal energy expenditure. Their enormous wingspan would have provided exceptional lift-generating capability, allowing them to remain airborne for extended periods while scanning the landscape below for potential prey. The feeding ecology of Hatzeg's giant pterosaurs adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of this ancient ecosystem. With ground prey that was often quite small relative to their own size, these predators might have needed to consume multiple animals per feeding session. This could have led to interesting behavioral adaptations, such as food caching or social feeding behaviors that allowed them to make the most of successful hunting episodes. Evidence from fossilized remains suggests that at least some of these pterosaurs were capable of terrestrial locomotion as well as flight. Their robust limb bones and powerful musculature indicate they could move effectively on the ground, possibly stalking prey through dense vegetation or along shorelines. This combination of aerial and terrestrial hunting capabilities would have made them incredibly versatile predators. The reproductive strategies of these giant pterosaurs remain largely mysterious, but their size and presumed intelligence suggest they likely invested considerable effort in raising their young. Large flying reptiles would have required extensive parental care, both to protect vulnerable offspring and to teach them the complex skills necessary for successful flight and hunting. Nesting sites would have been crucial resources, possibly leading to territorial behaviors and competition between breeding pairs. The seasonal patterns on Hatzeg Island would have significantly influenced pterosaur behavior and ecology. During periods of abundant prey, these giant predators might have been able to build up substantial energy reserves. During leaner times, their ability to travel long distances in search of food would have been crucial for survival. Their large size might have provided advantages during resource-scarce periods, as they could survive longer without food than smaller animals. The preservation of pterosaur fossils presents unique challenges, as their hollow bones are particularly fragile and prone to crushing during fossilization. The fact that we have such detailed remains from Hatzeg Island speaks to the exceptional preservation conditions that existed there. Some specimens retain details of bone internal structure, providing unprecedented insights into pterosaur biology and physiology. But pterosaurs weren't the only flying creatures in Hatzeg Island skies. The fossil record also reveals evidence of early birds, adding another dimension to the aerial ecosystem. These primitive avians were much smaller than their pterosaur contemporaries, likely occupying different ecological niches and exploiting different food sources. The coexistence of birds and pterosaurs on Hatzeg Island provides a fascinating glimpse into the transition period when both groups were experimenting with different approaches to aerial life. The diversity of flying creatures above Hațeg Island created complex three-dimensional ecosystems that extended from the forest floor to the highest reaches of the atmosphere. Different species operated at different altitudes, pursued different prey, and employed different flight strategies. This vertical stratification of ecological niches allowed for remarkable biodiversity within the constraints of island life. Understanding the flight capabilities and behaviors of Hațeg's aerial fauna requires sophisticated computer modeling and biomechanical analysis. Scientists use detailed measurements of fossilized bones to reconstruct wing shapes, estimate flight speeds, and model takeoff and landing behaviors. These analyses reveal that, despite their enormous size, the giant pterosaurs were remarkably efficient flyers, capable of covering vast distances with minimal energy expenditure. The impact of these aerial predators on Hațeg Island's terrestrial ecosystems would have been profound. Their presence would have influenced the behavior and evolution of ground-dwelling animals, possibly driving the development of defensive strategies and habitat preferences. Small dinosaurs and other terrestrial creatures would have needed to remain vigilant for attacks from above, potentially influencing their daily activity patterns and social behaviors. The extinction of these magnificent flying giants at the end of the Cretaceous represents one of the greatest losses in the history of life on Earth. Never again would our planet see flying creatures of such enormous size and sophistication. Their disappearance marked the end of an era when the skies were dominated by reptilian titans, leaving the aerial realm to be inherited by much smaller birds and mammals. Yet their legacy lives on in the fossil record of Hațeg Island, where exceptional preservation conditions have captured details of their anatomy, behavior, and ecology that might otherwise have been lost forever. Each new discovery adds to our understanding of how these remarkable creatures lived, hunted, and dominated the skies above their miniaturized island world. As we delve deeper into the mysteries of Hațeg Island, we'll discover that the relationship between aerial giants and terrestrial miniatures was just one aspect of a much larger evolutionary story. The island was also home to an incredible array of other creatures: crocodiles that walked on land, tiny mammals with specialized teeth, and amphibians with unusual characteristics that set them apart from their mainland relatives. The non-dinosaurian inhabitants of Hațeg Island tell equally compelling stories of evolutionary adaptation and innovation. Among the most fascinating were the crocodilian relatives that had adapted to a predominantly terrestrial lifestyle. These weren't your typical water-dwelling crocodiles. They were land-adapted predators with features that seem almost impossible by modern standards. Picture a crocodile-like creature, but one that had evolved to spend most of its time on dry land rather than in water. This remarkable animal had developed enlarged air-filled sinuses in its skull that likely served multiple functions. These sinuses may have enhanced its hearing capabilities when operating outside of water, giving it a significant advantage when hunting terrestrial prey. Additionally, These air-filled chambers reduced the overall weight of the skull, making terrestrial locomotion more efficient. The limb structure of these land-adapted crocodilians reveals just how far evolution had pushed them from their aquatic origins. Their forelimbs showed robust musculature and bone structure, suggesting a semi-erect gait, something virtually unknown among modern crocodilians. This upright posture would have allowed for more efficient movement across the varied terrain of Hațeg Island, from dense forests to open floodplains. Evidence from the surrounding geological formations suggests these terrestrial crocodilians inhabited environments with seasonal water sources, temporary ponds and streams that would appear during wet seasons and disappear during dry periods. This variable aquatic habitat likely drove their evolution toward increased terrestrial capability, as they needed to move between water sources to find food and suitable habitat. The hunting strategies of these land-adapted crocodilians would have been unlike anything we observe in modern ecosystems. Rather than the ambush tactics typical of aquatic crocodiles, these creatures likely pursued active hunting strategies, using their enhanced mobility to track down prey across the island's diverse landscapes. Their robust build and powerful limbs suggest they were capable of tackling relatively large prey animals, possibly including some of the island's miniaturized dinosaurs. Sharing the terrestrial environments with these unusual crocodilians were small mammals that had evolved their own remarkable adaptations to island life. Among the most striking were tiny creatures no larger than modern shrews, yet possessing one of the most unusual dental features known from any mammal. Their teeth contained iron-rich minerals that gave them a distinctive blood-red coloration, a feature that might sound like something from a horror movie, but which served a crucial biological function. This iron reinforcement in their tooth enamel provided extra durability and strength, essential for animals whose teeth didn't grow continuously throughout their lives, like those of modern rodents. In an environment where every calorie was precious and food sources might be tough or difficult to process, having teeth that could withstand heavy use without wearing down quickly would have provided a significant survival advantage. These tiny mammals were likely insectivorous, specializing in hunting the small invertebrates that thrived in Hațeg Island's leaf litter and soil environments. Their small size allowed them to exploit ecological niches that were unavailable to larger animals, while their specialized teeth gave them the tools necessary to process their preferred prey efficiently. Despite their diminutive stature, they were perfectly adapted to their specific role in the island ecosystem. The success of these small mammals on Hațeg Island demonstrates an important principle of island evolution. Sometimes the most successful strategies involve becoming highly specialized rather than simply growing larger or smaller. These creatures found their niche and evolved sophisticated adaptations that allowed them to thrive in their specific environment. But perhaps most remarkably, these mammalian lineages proved to be among the most resilient inhabitants of Hațeg Island. While the dinosaurs and giant pterosaurs would eventually perish in the mass extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period, the small mammals survived this global catastrophe. Their insectivorous lifestyle and small body size provided them with the flexibility needed to weather the dramatic environmental changes that devastated larger animals. When conditions eventually changed and Hațeg Island became reconnected to the European mainland, these survivor mammals rapidly expanded their range. They spread across the continent, becoming common and successful for millions of years after their giant contemporaries had vanished forever. Their story represents one of evolution's great success stories, proof that sometimes the smallest and most specialized creatures are also the most adaptable. The amphibians of Hațeg Island present yet another fascinating example of evolutionary creativity under island conditions. These creatures had evolved characteristics that set them apart dramatically from typical amphibians, developing features that seem to blur the lines between different vertebrate groups. Some possessed unusual scale-like structures covering their bodies, though these weren't true reptilian scales, but rather bony plates that formed beneath the skin, more similar to fish scales than anything typically seen in amphibians. These scale-bearing amphibians also exhibited remarkable flexibility in their neck structure, with specialized joints between skull and vertebrae that allowed for a range of motion more typical of mammals than amphibians. This enhanced neck mobility would have provided significant advantages when hunting small prey in dense vegetation or confined spaces, allowing them to strike quickly and accurately without needing to reposition their entire body. The turtle relatives found on Hațeg Island reveal another dimension of reptilian adaptation to island conditions. Recent discoveries have provided unprecedented detail about the anatomy and lifestyle of these ancient creatures, including three-dimensional reconstructions of their skulls and detailed studies of their neuroanatomy. These analyses reveal features supporting a terrestrial lifestyle, suggesting that even the island's turtle relatives had adapted away from aquatic habits in favor of land-based living. The sensory capabilities of these ancient turtle relatives provide fascinating insights into how island life shaped behavior and ecology. Detailed study of their brain structure reveals information about their hearing abilities, vision, and other sensory systems that would have been crucial for survival in their island environment. These neuroanatomical features help scientists understand not just what these creatures looked like, but how they perceived and interacted with their world. The lizard fauna of Hațeg Island, while perhaps less spectacular than some of the larger inhabitants, played crucial roles in the ecosystem's function. Multiple species have been identified from jaw fragments and other fossilized remains, suggesting a diverse community of small reptiles that exploited various ecological niches. These lizards appear to have been relatively common throughout the European archipelago, of which Hațeg Island was a part, indicating successful adaptation strategies that allowed them to thrive across multiple island environments. The diversity of these smaller reptilian inhabitants demonstrates that Hațeg Island's ecosystem was far more complex than just a collection of miniaturized dinosaurs and giant pterosaurs. Every size, class, and ecological niche supported its own specialized species, creating intricate food webs and ecological relationships that sustained the entire community. From tiny insectivorous mammals to massive aerial predators, each component played a vital role in maintaining ecosystem stability. The preservation of soft tissue details in some Hațeg Island fossils provides unprecedented opportunities to study the biology and behavior of these ancient creatures. In some cases, original coloration has been preserved, offering direct evidence of how these animals appeared in life. These exceptional preservation conditions allow scientists to reconstruct not just the anatomy of ancient species, but aspects of their appearance and behavior that are rarely accessible through fossil evidence. As we continue to explore the remarkable inhabitants of this ancient island ecosystem, we begin to see how all these diverse creatures fit together into a functioning ecological community. The interactions between aerial giants and terrestrial miniatures, between specialized predators and their adapted prey, created one of the most unique and fascinating ecosystems in Earth's history. Each species had found its own solution to the challenges of island life, contributing to an evolutionary experiment that continues to provide insights into the creative power of natural selection. The geological story of Hațeg Island itself provides crucial context for understanding how this remarkable ecosystem came to exist. The rocks that preserve these ancient creatures tell a tale of environmental change and stability that spans millions of years. During the Late Cretaceous period, this region experienced a gradual transition from subhumid, seasonally wet conditions to more extensive wetland environments. This climatic evolution created the perfect conditions for preserving the extraordinary fossil assemblage that scientists study today. The sedimentary formations that entomb Hațeg Island's ancient inhabitants reveal details about the environments these creatures called home. River systems carved through lush landscapes, creating floodplains that supported diverse plant communities. Seasonal flooding deposited layers of sediment that would eventually become the fossil-bearing rocks we examine today. Each geological layer represents a snapshot in time, preserving moments from an ecosystem that functioned for millions of years. Understanding these ancient environments requires careful analysis of not just the animal fossils, but the plant remains, sediment characteristics, and geochemical signatures preserved in the rocks. Scientists can reconstruct ancient temperatures, rainfall patterns, and seasonal variations that influenced how these island communities functioned. This environmental context is essential for understanding why evolution took such unique paths on Hațeg Island. The plant communities that supported this extraordinary fauna were themselves remarkable adaptations to island conditions. Ferns dominated many areas, creating dense understory environments that provided shelter and food for numerous animal species. Conifers reached impressive heights, forming canopy layers that supported different ecological communities at various levels above the ground. Early flowering plants were beginning their evolutionary radiation, adding new dimensions to the island's botanical diversity. These plant communities weren't just passive backdrops for animal evolution. They were active participants in shaping the island's ecology. The coevolution between plants and their animal pollinators, seed dispersers, and herbivorous consumers created complex networks of interdependence that influenced the evolutionary trajectory of every species on the island. Changes in plant communities would have cascaded through the entire ecosystem, affecting everything from the smallest insects to the largest pterosaurs. The seasonal patterns that characterized Hațeg Island's climate created temporal dimensions to ecological interactions that added another layer of complexity to this ancient ecosystem. During wet seasons, expanded wetlands and lush vegetation would have supported larger populations of herbivorous animals. Dry seasons would have concentrated resources and intensified competition, driving different evolutionary pressures that shaped species adaptations over geological time. These climatic cycles also influenced preservation conditions, with seasonal flooding events, creating the rapid burial necessary for exceptional fossil preservation. The alternating wet and dry conditions led to different types of sediment deposition, creating the varied geological contexts that preserved different aspects of the ancient ecosystem. Some formations preserved terrestrial environments, while others captured aquatic or semi-aquatic communities. The taphonomic processes that preserved Hațeg Island's fossils provide their own fascinating insights into ancient ecology and behavior. The way bones were buried, the orientation of skeletal remains, and the association of different species in fossil assemblages all provide clues about how these ancient communities functioned. Some fossil sites preserve evidence of seasonal mortality events, while others capture more gradual accumulation of remains over longer time periods. Advanced analytical techniques now allow scientists to extract information from these fossils that would have been impossible to obtain just decades ago. Histological analysis of bone tissue reveals details about growth rates, metabolism, and life history strategies. Isotopic analysis provides insights into diet, migration patterns, and environmental conditions. Three-dimensional imaging techniques allow researchers to study internal bone structure and reconstruct soft tissues that are rarely preserved in fossils. The application of these modern analytical methods to Hațeg Island fossils continues to yield surprising discoveries. Recent studies have revealed evidence of diseases and injuries that provide glimpses into the daily struggles faced by individual animals. Tumors, infections, and traumatic injuries preserved in fossilized bones tell stories of survival and adaptation at the individual level that complement our understanding of broader evolutionary patterns. Some of the most remarkable discoveries from Hațeg Island involve the preservation of behavioral evidence. Fossilized nesting sites provide insights into reproductive strategies and parental care behaviors. Trackways preserve evidence of locomotion and social interactions. Coprolites reveal dietary preferences and digestive processes. Each type of behavioral evidence adds another dimension to our understanding of how these ancient creatures lived their daily lives. The study of Hațeg Island fossils has also contributed significantly to our understanding of evolutionary developmental biology. The extreme size changes observed in island species provide natural experiments in the genetic and developmental mechanisms that control body size. Comparative studies of island and mainland relatives help identify the specific genetic pathways that were modified during island adaptation. These evolutionary insights have implications that extend far beyond paleontology. Understanding how ancient species adapted to island conditions provides valuable perspectives on how modern species might respond to habitat fragmentation, climate change, and other environmental pressures. The lessons learned from Hațeg Island's evolutionary experiments are increasingly relevant in our modern world of rapid environmental change. The taxonomic complexity revealed by Hațeg Island fossils demonstrates just how much diversity can evolve within isolated ecosystems. Multiple species of sauropods, theropods, and pterosaurs coexisted on this relatively small landmass, each occupying distinct ecological niches. This high level of endemism, species found nowhere else on Earth, is characteristic of island ecosystems and highlights the creative power of evolution when populations become geographically isolated. The process of taxonomic revision continues as new specimens are discovered and existing materials are reanalyzed using modern techniques. Species that were once thought to be distinct have been synonymized, while new species continue to be described from previously unrecognized fossils. This ongoing taxonomic work reflects both the complexity of Hațeg Island's fauna and the challenges involved in interpreting fragmentary fossil evidence. The biogeographical connections revealed by Hațeg Island fossils provide fascinating insights into the complex geography of the Cretaceous world. Some species show close relationships to forms found in South America and Asia, suggesting complex patterns of dispersal and variance during the breakup of ancient supercontinents. These biogeographical patterns help scientists reconstruct the paleogeography of the Cretaceous world and understand how continental drift influenced biological evolution. The end Cretaceous mass extinction event that terminated the age of dinosaurs had profound impacts on Hațeg Island's ecosystem. The giant pterosaurs, diverse dinosaur communities, and many other groups disappeared forever, marking the end of one of Earth's most remarkable evolutionary experiments. However, some lineages, particularly small mammals and certain reptile groups, survived this catastrophic event and continued to evolve and diversify in the post-extinction world. The survival strategies that allowed certain Hațeg Island species to persist through the end Cretaceous extinction provide important insights into the factors that determine survival during mass extinction events. Small body size, dietary flexibility, and the ability to exploit multiple habitat types appear to have been crucial characteristics for survival. These patterns help scientists understand not just past extinction events, but also the factors that might influence species survival during current biodiversity crises. Modern conservation biology draws important lessons from the study of ancient island ecosystems, like Hațeg Island. The high levels of endemism, specialized ecological relationships, and vulnerability to environmental change that characterize this ancient ecosystem are mirrored in many modern island environments. Understanding how ancient island species responded to environmental pressures provides valuable guidance for conservation efforts in threatened island ecosystems today. The ongoing research at Hațeg Island fossil sites continues to yield new discoveries that expand our understanding of this remarkable ancient ecosystem. International collaborations bring together paleontologists, geologists, and biologists from around the world to study different aspects of the island's evolutionary story. Advanced field techniques and laboratory analyses continue to reveal new details about species that lived and died on this ancient island millions of years ago. Educational and outreach programs based on Hațeg Island research help communicate the excitement and importance of paleontological discovery to broader audiences. Museum exhibits, educational materials, and public lectures bring the story of this ancient island ecosystem to people around the world, inspiring new generations of scientists and fostering public appreciation for the importance of paleontological research. The preservation of Hațeg Island fossil sites represents an ongoing challenge that requires cooperation between scientists, local communities, and government agencies. Protecting these irreplaceable scientific resources while allowing continued research requires careful management and long-term planning. The fossils preserved in these rocks represent millions of years of evolutionary history that, once damaged or destroyed, can never be replaced. Future research directions for Hațeg Island studies include the application of emerging analytical techniques that promise to reveal even more details about ancient life. Advanced imaging technologies, sophisticated geochemical analyses, and computational modeling approaches continue to expand the types of information that can be extracted from fossil specimens. Each new technique opens new windows into understanding how this remarkable ancient ecosystem functioned. The story of Hațeg Island serves as a powerful reminder of the incredible creativity and adaptability of life on Earth. In the face of geographic isolation, limited resources, and unique environmental constraints, evolution produced an ecosystem unlike anything that exists today. From miniaturized dinosaurs to giant flying reptiles, from iron-toothed mammals to terrestrial crocodilians, this ancient island was home to creatures that challenge our assumptions about how life adapts and thrives under unusual conditions. As we venture deeper into the extraordinary world of Hațeg Island, we encounter creatures that defy our conventional understanding of prehistoric life. The fossil record reveals a menagerie of animals that seem almost fantastical in their adaptations, each one perfectly sculpted by millions of years of island evolution to fill specific ecological roles in this miniaturized Mesozoic world. Among the most peculiar inhabitants were small amphibians that bore virtually no resemblance to their modern relatives. These creatures, no larger than your thumb, possessed bodies covered in an intricate mosaic of tiny scales that sparkled like chain mail beneath the Cretaceous sun. But these weren't ordinary reptilian scales. They were bony plates that formed beneath layers of skin, creating a defensive armor that protected these delicate creatures from the numerous predators that shared their island home. What made these amphibians truly remarkable was their extraordinary flexibility. While most amphibians are notoriously rigid in their movements, these island dwellers had evolved necks that could twist and turn with almost mammalian grace. This enhanced mobility allowed them to navigate the dense leaf litter and tangled vegetation that carpeted the forest floor, pursuing tiny invertebrates through spaces where less flexible creatures could never venture. Picture these miniature armored amphibians scuttling through the undergrowth like living jewels, their scaled bodies catching fragments of sunlight that penetrated the forest canopy. They represented evolution's solution to a unique problem: how to be a successful amphibian in an environment where traditional amphibian strategies simply wouldn't work. Their story demonstrates that even the most conservative animal groups can undergo radical transformation when faced with the right evolutionary pressures. The turtle relatives of Hațeg Island tell an equally compelling story of adaptation and innovation. Recent fossil discoveries have provided scientists with unprecedented detail about these ancient reptiles, including complete three-dimensional reconstructions of their skulls and sophisticated analyses of their brain structure. What emerges from this research is a picture of creatures that had largely abandoned aquatic lifestyles in favor of terrestrial living, a remarkable departure from the habits of most turtle lineages. These land-dwelling turtle relatives possessed sensory systems that were finely tuned to terrestrial life. Analysis of their fossilized brain tissue reveals enhanced capabilities for processing visual and auditory information in aerial environments rather than underwater. Their skull structure suggests they were active, alert animals that relied on keen senses to navigate their complex island ecosystem and avoid the numerous predators that shared their habitat. But perhaps most intriguingly, these turtle relatives appear to have been highly social creatures. Fossil evidence suggests they may have lived in small groups, possibly cooperating in defense against predators or in locating food sources. This social behavior would have been a significant advantage in an environment where resources were limited and dangers were numerous. By working together, these ancient reptiles could have achieved levels of success that would have been impossible for solitary individuals. The lizard communities of Hațeg Island were remarkably diverse, with multiple species coexisting in the same relatively small area. Fossilized jaw fragments and skeletal remains reveal a complex community of small reptiles that had divided up the island's resources with remarkable precision. Some species appear to have specialized in hunting tiny insects in leaf litter, while others focused on larger prey items in more open habitats. These lizards weren't just random collections of species that happened to wash up on the island. They were carefully evolved components of a sophisticated ecosystem. Each species had found its own particular niche, its own specialized role that allowed it to coexist with numerous close relatives without direct competition. This level of ecological specialization is characteristic of mature island ecosystems and demonstrates just how long Hațeg Island had been isolated from mainland influences. The preservation of these lizard fossils provides remarkable insights into their daily lives and behaviors. Some specimens preserve evidence of seasonal molting patterns, revealing details about how these creatures grew and developed in their island environment. Others show evidence of territorial disputes and social interactions, providing glimpses into the complex behavioral dynamics that governed lizard society on ancient Hațeg Island. Among the most enigmatic inhabitants of Hațeg Island were creatures whose exact identities continue to puzzle paleontologists today. Fragmentary remains suggest the presence of small, bird-like animals with characteristics that don't fit neatly into any modern taxonomic category. These mysterious creatures might have been early relatives of modern birds, or they might have represented entirely unique evolutionary experiments that have no modern analogues. What makes these enigmatic fossils particularly intriguing is their combination of primitive and advanced characteristics. Some features suggest very ancient evolutionary origins, while others appear remarkably sophisticated and modern. This mosaic of traits is exactly what we might expect from creatures that evolved in isolation, free from the evolutionary constraints that shaped their mainland relatives. The behavioral ecology of these mysterious creatures remains largely speculative, but their anatomical features provide tantalizing clues about how they lived. Their limb proportions suggest they were capable of both terrestrial locomotion and possibly limited flight capabilities. Their skull structure indicates they possessed keen senses and relatively large brains for their body size, suggesting sophisticated behavioral capabilities that might have included complex social interactions or advanced problem-solving abilities. Recent advances in fossil analysis techniques have begun to shed new light on these mysterious creatures. High-resolution CT scanning reveals internal bone structures that were previously invisible, while chemical analysis of fossilized tissues provides insights into diet and metabolism. Each new analytical technique brings us closer to understanding what these creatures were and how they fit into the broader ecosystem of Hațeg Island. The plant-eating dinosaurs of Hațeg Island faced unique challenges that shaped their evolution in fascinating directions. With limited vegetation available and intense competition for food resources, these herbivores had to become incredibly efficient at extracting nutrition from whatever plant material they could find. This pressure drove the evolution of increasingly specialized feeding apparatus and digestive systems. Some of these herbivorous dinosaurs developed jaws of extraordinary power, with muscle attachment sites that suggest bite forces far exceeding what their small size might suggest. These weren't delicate browsers picking at tender shoots. These were robust, determined creatures capable of processing the toughest, most fibrous plant materials their island home had to offer. Their teeth show wear patterns consistent with a diet of tough, abrasive vegetation that would have challenged even the most specialized modern herbivores. The social behaviors of these plant-eating dinosaurs likely played crucial roles in their survival strategies. With limited food resources scattered across the island, cooperative foraging might have provided significant advantages. Groups of herbivores working together could have located food sources more efficiently and defended valuable feeding areas from competitors. Evidence from trackway sites suggests that at least some species did indeed move in coordinated groups. The reproductive strategies of Hațeg Island's herbivorous dinosaurs reveal another layer of adaptation to island constraints. Fossil evidence suggests extended parental care periods, with adults remaining with their offspring for longer periods than might be typical for mainland species. This investment in offspring survival makes perfect sense in an environment where every individual represents a significant portion of the total population, and where survival to reproductive age was far from guaranteed. The carnivorous dinosaurs that stalked Hatzeg Island's herbivores were themselves masterpieces of evolutionary adaptation. These predators had evolved hunting strategies perfectly suited to their miniaturized prey base and the unique characteristics of their island environment. Rather than relying on overwhelming size and power like their mainland relatives, these island predators emphasize speed, agility, and tactical sophistication. Some of these carnivorous dinosaurs developed enhanced sensory capabilities that gave them significant advantages when hunting in dense vegetation. Enlarged brain cases suggest sophisticated neural processing capabilities, while specialized skull features indicate enhanced hearing and possibly improved vision. These weren't mindless killing machines. They were intelligent, adaptable predators that used their wits as much as their physical capabilities to secure prey. The hunting territories of these predators would have been carefully maintained and vigorously defended. With limited prey availability and the need to avoid direct competition with other predator species, each carnivorous dinosaur would have needed to establish and maintain exclusive access to sufficient hunting grounds. This territorial behavior would have created complex social dynamics within predator communities. Evidence from fossil sites suggests that some of these carnivorous dinosaurs may have engaged in cooperative hunting behaviors. Trackway evidence indicates that certain species moved in coordinated groups, possibly working together to bring down prey animals that would have been too large or too fast for individual hunters to tackle successfully. This social hunting strategy would have been particularly valuable when targeting the island's larger herbivorous dinosaurs. The scavenging opportunities available to Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaurs would have been significant but unpredictable. The island's limited area meant that carcasses from natural deaths, failed predation attempts, or other mortality events would have been concentrated in relatively small areas. Competition for these valuable food sources would have been intense, possibly leading to the evolution of specialized scavenging behaviors and social hierarchies that determined access to carrion. The seasonal patterns that characterized Hatzeg Island's climate created temporal variations in prey availability that would have significantly influenced predator behavior and ecology. During wet seasons, when plant productivity was high, herbivorous prey would have been more abundant and possibly less vigilant. Dry seasons would have concentrated both predators and prey around limited water sources, creating opportunities for ambush hunting, but also increasing competition among carnivorous species. The physiological adaptations of Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaurs reflect the unique challenges of being a predator in a resource-limited environment. Evidence suggests that some species evolved enhanced metabolic efficiency, allowing them to survive longer periods without food than their mainland relatives. Others developed the ability to consume and digest a wider variety of prey items, including materials that might have been inedible to more specialized predators. The dental adaptations of these island predators reveal fascinating insights into their hunting and feeding strategies. Some species evolved teeth specialized for processing small prey items efficiently, while others developed robust dental batteries capable of crushing bone and extracting maximum nutrition from each kill. These dental specializations represent finely tuned evolutionary solutions to the specific dietary challenges posed by island life. The limb proportions and locomotory adaptations of Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaurs show clear evidence of optimization for their particular hunting environments. Some species developed enhanced cursorial capabilities for pursuit hunting in open areas, while others evolved more robust, powerful limbs suited for ambush tactics in dense vegetation. Each locomotory strategy represented a different approach to the fundamental challenge of capturing prey in a competitive island ecosystem. The evolutionary relationships among Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaurs reveal complex patterns of adaptive radiation and ecological specialization. Multiple lineages of predatory dinosaurs colonized the island at different times and subsequently evolved in different directions, creating a diverse community of carnivores with minimal overlap in ecological niches. This pattern of evolutionary diversification is characteristic of successful island colonizations and demonstrates the creative power of natural selection when operating in isolated environments. The preservation of soft tissue details in some carnivorous dinosaur fossils from Hatzeg Island provides unprecedented opportunities to study the biology and behavior of these ancient predators. In rare cases, fossilized muscle attachments preserve evidence of locomotory capabilities and hunting behaviors. Preserved stomach contents reveal dietary preferences and feeding strategies. These exceptional preservation conditions allow scientists to reconstruct not just what these predators looked like, but how they lived and hunted in their ancient island world. The impact of these carnivorous dinosaurs on Hatzeg Island's ecosystem extended far beyond their direct predatory effects. Their presence would have influenced the behavior and evolution of prey species, driving the development of defensive strategies and escape behaviors. The fear of predation would have shaped daily activity patterns, habitat preferences, and social behaviors throughout the herbivorous dinosaur community. The coevolutionary relationships between predators and prey on Hatzeg Island created dynamic feedback systems that influenced the evolutionary trajectory of both groups. As prey species evolved better defenses, predators responded with enhanced hunting capabilities. This evolutionary arms race continued for millions of years, producing increasingly sophisticated adaptations on both sides and contributing to the remarkable diversity of the island's fauna. The extinction patterns observed in Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaur community provide important insights into the vulnerability of specialized predators to environmental change. When the end Cretaceous mass extinction event devastated global ecosystems, the highly specialized predators of Hatzeg Island were among the first casualties. Their dependence on specific prey species and their inability to rapidly adapt to changing conditions made them particularly vulnerable to the cascading effects of environmental catastrophe. The legacy of Hatzeg Island's carnivorous dinosaurs extends far beyond their own time and place. Their fossils provide crucial data for understanding how predator-prey relationships function in isolated ecosystems and how specialization can both enhance short-term success and increase long-term vulnerability. These lessons are increasingly relevant in our modern world, where habitat fragmentation is creating island-like conditions for many species, and where understanding the dynamics of small, isolated populations is crucial for conservation efforts. As we continue our exploration of Hatzeg Island's remarkable inhabitants, we begin to see how all these diverse creatures fit together into a functioning ecological community. The interactions between miniaturized herbivores and their specialized predators, between aerial giants and terrestrial communities, between ancient lineages and evolutionary newcomers, created one of the most unique and fascinating ecosystems in Earth's history. Each species represented a different solution to the fundamental challenges of island life, contributing to an evolutionary experiment that continues to provide insights into the creative power of natural selection and the remarkable adaptability of life on our planet. The story we're uncovering reveals not just a collection of unusual animals, but a complete world with its own rules, its own rhythms, and its own evolutionary logic. From the smallest iron-toothed mammal to the largest soaring pterosaur, every inhabitant of Hatzeg Island played a role in maintaining the delicate balance that allowed this extraordinary ecosystem to persist for millions of years. Their collective story is a testament to life's ability to find solutions to even the most challenging environmental conditions and to create beauty and complexity even in the most constrained circumstances. The remarkable diversity of Hatzeg Island's fauna extended beyond the well-known dinosaurs and pterosaurs to include an extraordinary array of specialized creatures that had each found their own unique evolutionary solutions to island life. Among these were some of the most unusual crocodilian relatives ever discovered, animals that challenge our fundamental assumptions about what it means to be a crocodile. Oh, these weren't the semi-aquatic ambush predators we associate with modern crocodilians. Instead, they were dynamic terrestrial hunters that had evolved sophisticated adaptations for life on dry land. Their skulls contained enlarged air-filled chambers that served multiple crucial functions in their terrestrial lifestyle. These sinuses likely enhanced their hearing capabilities when operating outside of water, giving them acute sensitivity to the sounds of potential prey moving through dense vegetation or across open ground. The weight reduction provided by these air-filled spaces was equally important. Traditional crocodilian skulls are dense, heavy structures perfectly suited for underwater ambush tactics, but poorly adapted for active terrestrial hunting. By developing extensive pneumatic chambers, these island crocodilians achieved the lighter, more maneuverable skull architecture necessary for pursuing prey across varied terrestrial environments. Their limb structure tells an even more remarkable story of evolutionary transformation. Unlike the sprawling gait typical of modern crocodilians, these ancient island dwellers had evolved toward a semi-erect posture that allowed for much more efficient terrestrial locomotion. Their forelimbs showed robust muscular development and bone architecture that supported a more upright stance, enabling them to move with surprising speed and agility across the island's diverse landscapes. The environmental context that drove these remarkable adaptations becomes clear when we examine the geological evidence surrounding their fossil remains. These crocodilian relatives inhabited a world of seasonal extremes, where permanent water bodies were scarce and temporary pools appeared and disappeared with predictable regularity. During wet seasons, scattered ponds and streams provided aquatic hunting opportunities. But as dry seasons progressed, these water sources would gradually shrink and vanish, forcing any aquatic predator to either retreat to increasingly crowded permanent water bodies or develop the capability to hunt on land. The evolutionary solution adopted by Hațeg Island's crocodilians was remarkable in its thoroughness. Rather than simply tolerating brief periods of terrestrial activity, they had become genuinely capable land predators. Their robust musculature and modified gait allowed them to actively pursue prey across open ground, through dense vegetation, and even up moderate slopes. This terrestrial capability opened up entirely new ecological niches that were unavailable to their more traditional aquatic relatives. The hunting strategies employed by these land-adapted crocodilians would have been fascinating to observe. Instead of the patient, motionless waiting that characterizes modern crocodilian predation, these creatures likely employed active pursuit tactics. They may have used their enhanced hearing to locate prey animals from considerable distances, then stalk them through cover before launching rapid pursuit attacks. Their lighter skulls and more efficient locomotion would have allowed for hunting techniques that would be impossible for conventional crocodilians. The prey base available to these terrestrial crocodilians was diverse and abundant. The miniaturized herbivorous dinosaurs that grazed in open areas would have provided substantial meals, while smaller prey items like lizards, mammals, and possibly even juvenile dinosaurs would have offered more frequent feeding opportunities. Their robust build and powerful jaws suggest they were capable of tackling relatively large prey animals, possibly including some of the island's medium-sized herbivorous dinosaurs. The seasonal migration patterns of these crocodilians between temporary water sources created dynamic population distributions across the island. During peak wet seasons, they would have been dispersed across numerous small ponds and streams. As these water sources began to dry up, increasing numbers of individuals would have been forced to undertake terrestrial journeys to locate remaining aquatic habitats. These seasonal movements would have created temporary concentrations of predators around permanent water sources, leading to increased competition and possibly territorial disputes. The social behaviors of these unusual crocodilians remain largely mysterious, but their ecological circumstances suggest they may have developed social strategies quite different from those of modern species. The patchy distribution of suitable habitat and the seasonal necessity of terrestrial travel might have led to temporary aggregations during migration periods. Alternatively, the limited number of permanent water sources might have supported stable territorial systems with complex social hierarchies. The reproductive ecology of these terrestrial crocodilians would have been particularly challenging. Traditional crocodilian reproduction is intimately tied to aquatic environments, with females typically constructing nests near water sources, and young requiring aquatic nursery areas for early development. The seasonally variable aquatic habitats of Hatzeg Island would have required sophisticated timing of reproductive activities to ensure that nesting and early juvenile development coincided with periods of water availability. Evidence suggests that some of these crocodilian species may have evolved extended parental care behaviors to help their offspring survive the challenges of island life. The combination of limited resources, seasonal habitat changes, and numerous predators would have made juvenile survival particularly challenging. Enhanced parental investment, possibly including extended protection and guidance during terrestrial movements between water sources, would have significantly improved offspring survival rates. The physiological adaptations required for successful terrestrial predation extend far beyond simple locomotory modifications. These crocodilians would have needed enhanced cardiovascular systems to support the increased metabolic demands of active terrestrial hunting. Their respiratory systems would have required modifications to support sustained activity levels that would be unnecessary for ambush predators. Even their digestive systems might have evolved enhanced efficiency to maximize nutrition extraction from potentially irregular feeding opportunities. The sensory adaptations of these terrestrial crocodilians represent some of the most sophisticated features of their evolutionary transformation. Beyond the enhanced hearing provided by their enlarged cranial sinuses, they likely evolved improved visual systems adapted for terrestrial hunting. Their eyes may have developed enhanced motion detection capabilities for tracking moving prey across varied landscapes. Their chemoreceptory systems probably became more sensitive to airborne chemical cues that could help locate prey or detect territorial boundaries. The territorial behaviors of these land-adapted crocodilians would have created complex spatial dynamics across Hatzeg Island's landscape. Unlike aquatic crocodilians that can maintain territories along linear water bodies, terrestrial species would have needed to defend more complex three-dimensional territories that included both seasonal water sources and terrestrial hunting grounds. The seasonal changes in habitat availability would have required flexible territorial strategies that could adapt to changing resource distributions. The predator-prey relationships involving these terrestrial crocodilians added another layer of complexity to Hatzeg Island's ecological web. Their presence would have influenced the behavior and evolution of numerous prey species, possibly driving the development of enhanced vigilance behaviors and escape strategies among the island's herbivorous dinosaur communities. The threat of terrestrial crocodilian predation might have influenced daily activity patterns, with prey animals avoiding open areas during peak hunting periods. The coevolutionary dynamics between these predatory crocodilians and their prey created continuous evolutionary pressure that shaped both groups over millions of years. As prey species evolved better detection abilities and escape strategies, the crocodilians responded with enhanced hunting capabilities and stealth behaviors. This evolutionary arms race contributed to the remarkable diversity and specialization observed throughout Hatzeg Island's fauna. The extinction of these remarkable terrestrial crocodilians at the end of the Cretaceous represents the loss of one of evolution's most creative experiments in crocodilian design. Their highly specialized adaptations to island life, while remarkably successful for millions of years, ultimately proved to be a vulnerability when faced with the rapid environmental changes associated with the end Cretaceous mass extinction event. Their dependence on specific seasonal patterns in particular prey communities made them unable to adapt quickly enough to survive the global catastrophe. The fossil preservation of these terrestrial crocodilians has been exceptional, providing scientists with detailed insights into their anatomy, behavior, and ecology. Some specimens preserve evidence of muscle attachment sites that reveal details about their locomotory capabilities. Others show evidence of seasonal growth patterns that provide insights into their physiological adaptations to island life. These preservation conditions allow researchers to reconstruct not just what these creatures looked like, but how they functioned as living animals in their ancient ecosystem. Modern analytical techniques continue to reveal new details about these remarkable predators. CT scanning of fossil skulls reveals the internal structure of their enlarged sinuses and provides insights into their enhanced auditory capabilities. Biomechanical analysis of their limb bones helps scientists understand their locomotory efficiency and hunting strategies. Isotopic analysis of their teeth provides information about their diet and position within the island's food web. The study of these terrestrial crocodilians has important implications for understanding modern crocodilian evolution and ecology. Their existence demonstrates that crocodilian body plans are far more flexible and adaptable than previously recognized. This evolutionary potential may become increasingly important as modern crocodilian species face habitat loss, climate change, and other environmental pressures that might favor more terrestrial lifestyles. Contemporary conservation efforts for modern crocodilian species can benefit from understanding how their ancient relatives adapted to challenging environmental conditions. The strategies that allowed Hațeg Island's crocodilians to thrive in seasonally variable habitats might provide insights into how modern species could be managed in increasingly fragmented and unpredictable environments. The biogeographical implications of these terrestrial crocodilians extend our understanding of how crocodilian lineages dispersed and diversified during the Cretaceous period. Their presence on Hațeg Island, along with related forms found elsewhere in the European archipelago, suggests that terrestrial adaptations evolved multiple times within crocodilian lineages during this period. This pattern of convergent evolution toward terrestrial lifestyles indicates that the environmental conditions of Cretaceous Europe provided strong selective pressure favoring land-adapted crocodilian forms. The ecological roles filled by these terrestrial crocodilians on Hațeg Island demonstrate the remarkable flexibility of evolution when faced with available niches and ecological opportunities. In the absence of large terrestrial mammalian predators, these crocodilian lineages expanded into predatory roles that would later be filled by carnivorous mammals in post-Cretaceous ecosystems. Their success illustrates how evolution can rapidly reshape even the most conservative animal groups when environmental conditions provide appropriate selective pressures. The respiratory adaptations required for sustained terrestrial activity would have represented significant physiological innovations for these crocodilian lineages. Modern crocodilians possess relatively inefficient respiratory systems that are adequate for their low-activity aquatic lifestyles, but would be insufficient for active terrestrial predation. The enhanced activity levels required for terrestrial hunting would have necessitated improvements in oxygen delivery and carbon dioxide removal that might have approached the efficiency seen in more active vertebrate groups. The thermoregulatory challenges faced by these terrestrial crocodilians would have been considerably more complex than those encountered by their aquatic relatives. Water provides thermal buffering that helps crocodilians maintain relatively stable body temperatures with minimal metabolic investment. Terrestrial environments present much greater temperature fluctuations and require more sophisticated behavioral and physiological thermoregulatory strategies. The development of effective terrestrial thermoregulation would have been essential for maintaining the activity levels necessary for successful terrestrial predation. The neurological adaptations required for terrestrial crocodilian lifestyles extend beyond simple sensory enhancements to include modifications in motor control, spatial navigation, and behavioral flexibility. Terrestrial hunting requires more complex movement patterns, three-dimensional spatial awareness, and adaptive behavioral responses than aquatic ambush predation. These cognitive demands would have driven evolutionary enhancements in brain structure and function that set these island species apart from their more traditional aquatic relatives. The dental adaptations observed in these terrestrial crocodilians provide insights into their feeding strategies and prey preferences, while maintaining the basic crocodilian tooth structure of conical, pointed teeth designed for gripping rather than cutting. Some species show modifications that suggest specialization for particular prey types or feeding behaviors. These dental variations indicate that different species within the terrestrial crocodilian community had evolved distinct ecological niches and feeding strategies. The limb proportions of these terrestrial crocodilians reveal sophisticated biomechanical adaptations for efficient terrestrial locomotion. Their hind limbs show elongation of key bones that would have improved stride length and locomotory efficiency. Their forelimbs demonstrate enhanced muscular development and joint modifications that supported more erect postures. These proportional changes represent fundamental reorganizations of crocodilian body architecture in response to terrestrial selective pressures. The tail modifications observed in some terrestrial crocodilian species from Hațeg Island suggest adaptations for enhanced terrestrial balance and maneuvering capability. While crocodilian tails are primarily adapted for aquatic propulsion, terrestrial species require tail functions more similar to those seen in terrestrial lizards, serving as dynamic counterbalances during rapid direction changes and providing stability during complex locomotory maneuvers. The integration of all these anatomical and physiological modifications created crocodilian species that were fundamentally different from any modern forms. These weren't simply crocodiles that occasionally wandered onto land. They were highly specialized terrestrial predators that happened to retain crocodilian ancestry. Their success demonstrates that even the most morphologically conservative vertebrate groups can undergo dramatic evolutionary transformation when appropriate selective pressures persist over sufficient time periods. The ecological impact of these terrestrial crocodilians on Hațeg Island's ecosystem cannot be overstated. As medium to large-sized predators, they would have exerted significant top-down control on herbivorous dinosaur populations, influencing everything from population dynamics to behavioral patterns to evolutionary trajectories. Their predatory pressure may have been one of the key factors driving the evolution of defensive adaptations and escape strategies among the island's herbivorous fauna. The seasonal population dynamics of these terrestrial crocodilians would have created temporal variations in predation pressure that added another layer of complexity to Hațeg Island's ecological relationships. During wet seasons, when the crocodilians were dispersed across numerous small water bodies, predation pressure on any particular area would have been relatively light. During dry seasons, when crocodilians concentrated around permanent water sources, local predation pressure would have intensified dramatically, possibly influencing the seasonal movement patterns of prey species. The scavenging opportunities available to these terrestrial crocodilians would have provided important supplemental nutrition, particularly during periods when active hunting was less successful. Their ability to move efficiently across terrestrial landscapes would have given them access to carcasses from natural mortality events, failed predation attempts by other species, and seasonal die-offs associated with resource limitations. This scavenging capability would have enhanced their ecological role and improved their survival during periods of prey scarcity. The interspecific relationships among different terrestrial crocodilian species on Hațeg Island likely involve complex patterns of competition, resource partitioning, and possibly even cooperative behaviors. With multiple species sharing similar ecological roles, mechanisms for reducing direct competition would have been essential for community stability. Different species might have specialized on different prey sizes, hunted in different habitats, or been active during different time periods to minimize competitive overlap. The fossil evidence for these remarkable terrestrial crocodilians continues to accumulate as new specimens are discovered and existing materials are reanalyzed using advanced techniques. Each new discovery adds details to our understanding of their anatomy, behavior, and ecological role in Hațeg Island's ancient ecosystem. The exceptional preservation conditions that characterize many Hațeg Island fossil sites have yielded specimens with unprecedented levels of detail, allowing researchers to reconstruct aspects of these animals' biology that would be impossible to determine from more typical fossil materials. The study of these terrestrial crocodilians has broader implications for understanding vertebrate evolution and the factors that drive major morphological and ecological transitions. Their evolution represents one of the clearest examples of how geographic isolation and novel selective pressures can drive dramatic evolutionary change within relatively conservative lineages. The lessons learned from studying their adaptations provide insights into evolutionary processes that extend far beyond crocodilian biology to illuminate general principles of adaptive evolution and ecological specialization. The mammalian inhabitants of Hațeg Island represent some of the most remarkable survival stories in the entire fossil record. While their dinosaur contemporaries captured headlines with their dramatic size reductions and unusual adaptations, the tiny mammals quietly evolved some of the most extraordinary features ever documented in prehistoric life. These weren't just random small creatures eking out an existence in the shadows of giants. They were highly specialized survivors whose innovations would ultimately outlast every other major group on the island. Among the most striking of these ancient mammals were diminutive creatures, no larger than modern mice, yet possessing one of the most unusual dental features ever discovered in any mammal. Their teeth gleamed with a distinctive crimson coloration that seemed almost supernatural in its intensity. This wasn't some quirk of fossilization or mineral replacement. This was their actual living appearance, the result of iron-rich compounds incorporated directly into their tooth enamel during development. The functional significance of this iron reinforcement becomes clear when we consider the unique challenges these mammals faced. Unlike modern rodents whose teeth grow continuously throughout their lives, allowing them to replace worn surfaces through constant growth, these ancient mammals possessed teeth that had to last their entire lifespans. In an environment where every calorie was precious and food sources were often tough, fibrous, or difficult to process, having teeth that could withstand tremendous wear without losing their cutting efficiency was literally a matter of life and death. The biomechanics of these iron-reinforced teeth represent one of evolution's most elegant engineering solutions. The iron compounds weren't simply deposited randomly throughout the enamel. They were precisely incorporated into the tooth structure in ways that maximized hardness and wear resistance while maintaining the sharp cutting edges necessary for efficient food processing. Modern materials, science has only recently begun to understand the sophisticated metallurgy that these ancient mammals achieved through purely biological processes. These tiny mammals occupied ecological niches that were largely invisible to larger animals, but absolutely crucial for ecosystem function. They were the island's primary processors of leaf litter, the creatures responsible for breaking down fallen vegetation and recycling nutrients back into the soil. Their specialized teeth allowed them to consume tough plant fibers, insect chitin, and other materials that would have been inedible to less well-equipped species. The microhabitats these mammals inhabited were incredibly diverse despite the island's limited area. Some species specialized in the dense leaf litter beneath towering conifers, where they hunted for insects and other invertebrates among decomposing needles and fallen branches. Others made their homes in the root systems of giant ferns, creating burrow networks that provided protection from predators and stable microclimates for raising young. The social structures of these mammalian communities remain largely mysterious, but their ecological circumstances suggest they may have developed cooperative behaviors that enhanced their survival prospects. With predators ranging from small carnivorous dinosaurs to aerial pterosaurs constantly threatening from above, group vigilance and coordinated alarm systems would have provided significant survival advantages. Some species may have evolved complex communication systems using ultrasonic vocalizations that were inaudible to their reptilian predators. The reproductive strategies of Hațeg Island's mammals reflect sophisticated adaptations to the unique challenges of island life. Evidence suggests that many species evolved extended gestation periods and enhanced parental care behaviors that maximized offspring survival in an environment where juvenile mortality was undoubtedly high. The investment in fewer but more carefully tended young would have been a logical response to the high costs of reproduction in a resource-limited ecosystem. The seasonal patterns that characterized Hațeg Island's climate created temporal variations in food availability that profoundly influenced mammalian behavior and ecology. During wet seasons when insect populations exploded and plant productivity peaked, these mammals would have experienced periods of relative abundance. Dry seasons would have brought scarcity that required sophisticated behavioral adaptations, possibly including seasonal dormancy, food caching, or dietary flexibility that allowed exploitation of alternative food sources. The thermoregulatory challenges faced by such small mammals in a subtropical climate required behavioral and physiological adaptations that may have been quite different from those seen in modern small mammals. The combination of high ambient temperatures and high humidity would have made heat dissipation a constant challenge. Evidence suggests that some species evolved nocturnal activity patterns that allowed them to avoid the hottest parts of the day, while taking advantage of peak insect activity during cooler nighttime hours. The predator avoidance strategies employed by these tiny mammals would have been crucial for their survival in an ecosystem dominated by numerous predatory species. Their small size provided some protection through cryptic behavior and the ability to hide in microhabitats that were inaccessible to larger predators. However, they also faced threats from aerial predators like small pterosaurs and possibly even predatory birds that could detect and capture them in even the most concealed locations. The sensory adaptations of Hațeg Island's mammals reveal sophisticated solutions to the challenges of survival in a complex and dangerous environment. Many species appear to have evolved enhanced auditory capabilities that allowed them to detect approaching predators from considerable distances. Their large ear structures and specialized inner ear anatomy suggest hearing sensitivities that may have extended into ultrasonic ranges, providing early warning systems against both terrestrial and aerial threats. The dietary flexibility of these mammals was remarkable, with different species exploiting virtually every available food source within their size range. Some specialized in hunting small arthropods, using their iron-reinforced teeth to crack through tough insect exoskeletons. Others focused on seeds and other plant materials, developing powerful jaw muscles that could generate the forces necessary to process hard-shelled plant reproductive structures. Still others may have been omnivorous generalists, capable of exploiting whatever food sources were temporarily abundant. The digestive adaptations of these mammals reflect their need to extract maximum nutrition from often poor-quality food sources. Many species evolved enlarged digestive systems relative to their body size, allowing for more thorough processing of fibrous plant materials. Some may have developed specialized gut microbiomes that could break down cellulose and other complex plant compounds, similar to the digestive strategies employed by modern leaf-eating mammals. The burrowing behaviors of many Hațeg Island mammal species created important ecosystem functions beyond simple predator avoidance. Their extensive tunnel systems helped aerate soil, improved water infiltration, and created habitat heterogeneity that benefited numerous other small animals. These engineering activities may have been one of the few ways that such small animals could significantly modify their physical environment to their advantage. The population dynamics of these mammalian communities would have been influenced by both bottom-up factors like food availability and top-down factors like predation pressure. Their high reproductive rates and short generation times would have allowed rapid population responses to changing environmental conditions. However, their small body size also made them vulnerable to population crashes during periods of extreme resource scarcity. The evolutionary relationships among Hațeg Island's mammalian fauna reveal complex patterns of adaptive radiation and ecological specialization. Multiple lineages appear to have colonized the island independently and subsequently diversified into species adapted to different ecological niches. This pattern of evolutionary diversification demonstrates the remarkable ability of mammalian lineages to exploit available ecological opportunities even in highly constrained environments. The preservation of mammalian fossils from Hațeg Island presents unique challenges due to their small size and delicate bone structure. The exceptional preservation conditions that characterize many island fossil sites have allowed recovery of remarkably complete specimens that provide unprecedented insights into mammalian anatomy and ecology. During the Cretaceous period, some specimens preserve details of soft tissue structure, while others retain evidence of behavioral adaptations and ecological relationships. The success of these mammalian lineages on Hațeg Island had profound implications for their evolutionary future. While the giant dinosaurs and pterosaurs that dominated the island would eventually succumb to the end Cretaceous mass extinction, many of the mammalian lineages possess characteristics that enhanced their survival prospects during this global catastrophe. Their small size, dietary flexibility, and ability to exploit protected microhabitats provided crucial advantages when environmental conditions deteriorated rapidly. The survival of these mammalian groups through the end Cretaceous extinction represents one of evolution's great success stories. When the environmental catastrophe that ended the age of dinosaurs devastated global ecosystems, these tiny survivors found themselves in a world suddenly free from the giant reptilian predators that had dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 150 million years. Their evolutionary innovations, developed under the unique selective pressures of island life, proved to be perfectly suited for surviving and thriving in the dramatically changed post-extinction world. The rapid expansion of these mammalian lineages following the end Cretaceous extinction demonstrates the evolutionary potential that had been building within mammalian communities throughout the Mesozoic era. when Hațeg Island became reconnected to the European mainland as sea levels fell and continental configurations changed, these survivor species spread rapidly across the continent. Their specialized adaptations, originally evolved for island life, proved remarkably successful in the diverse mainland environments they encountered. The ecological roles filled by these expanding mammalian populations fundamentally changed the structure of European ecosystems. For the first time in tens of millions of years, mammals became dominant components of terrestrial food webs rather than minor players in reptile-dominated systems. Their success initiated evolutionary radiations that would eventually produce the diverse mammalian fauna that characterizes modern ecosystems. The longevity of these mammalian lineages following their expansion from Hațeg Island is remarkable. Many groups continued to thrive and diversify for millions of years after the Cretaceous extinction, only finally disappearing during subsequent environmental changes and evolutionary transitions. Their extended success demonstrates that the adaptations evolved under island conditions provided long-term advantages that extended far beyond their original selective context. The modern analytical techniques applied to Hațeg Island mammalian fossils continue to reveal new details about their biology and ecological relationships. Advanced imaging technologies allow researchers to examine internal bone structure and tooth morphology with unprecedented resolution. Chemical analyses provide insights into diet, metabolism, and environmental conditions. Each new analytical approach adds details to our understanding of how these remarkable survivors lived and thrived in their ancient island ecosystem. The implications of mammalian success on Hațeg Island extend far beyond paleontology to illuminate fundamental principles of evolution, ecology, and survival. Their story demonstrates that evolutionary success often depends more on adaptability and specialization than on size or apparent dominance. The characteristics that allowed these tiny mammals to thrive in constrained island environments, dietary flexibility, efficient reproduction, behavioral sophistication, and physiological resilience, proved to be exactly the traits needed for surviving global environmental catastrophe. The conservation lessons derivable from Hațeg Island's mammalian communities are increasingly relevant in our modern world of habitat fragmentation and environmental change. Understanding how these ancient mammals adapted to resource limitations, predation pressure, and environmental variability provides valuable insights for managing modern mammalian populations facing similar challenges. Their survival strategies may offer guidance for conservation efforts aimed at maintaining mammalian diversity in increasingly fragmented landscapes. The biogeographical patterns revealed by Hațeg Island's mammalian fauna provide important insights into how mammalian lineages dispersed and diversified during the Cretaceous period. The presence of specialized endemic species alongside forms with broader geographic distributions suggests complex patterns of colonization, isolation, and subsequent evolutionary divergence. These biogeographical relationships help scientists understand the processes that shaped mammalian evolution throughout the Mesozoic era. The ecological engineering effects of these mammalian communities on Hațeg Island's ecosystems demonstrate that even very small animals can have disproportionately large impacts on ecosystem function. Their burrowing activities, seed dispersal behaviors, and nutrient cycling contributions would have influenced soil development, plant community structure, and habitat heterogeneity across the island. These ecosystem services provided by mammals may have been crucial for maintaining the stability and diversity of the entire island community. The coevolutionary relationships between Hațeg Island's mammals and other ecosystem components created complex feedback systems that influenced the evolutionary trajectory of multiple taxonomic groups. The predation pressure exerted by small mammalian predators may have influenced the evolution of arthropod communities. The seed dispersal services provided by frugivorous mammals may have shaped plant reproductive strategies. The soil modification activities of burrowing mammals may have influenced the evolution of plant root systems and soil-dwelling invertebrates. The physiological innovations developed by Hațeg Island's mammals represent solutions to fundamental biological challenges that extend far beyond their specific island context. Their iron-reinforced dental enamel represents a biomaterials innovation that modern materials science is only beginning to understand and replicate. Their metabolic adaptations to resource-limited environments provide insights into physiological flexibility that may be relevant for understanding how modern mammals respond to environmental stress. The behavioral complexity evident in Hațeg Island's mammalian communities suggests levels of cognitive sophistication that may have been underappreciated in ancient mammalian lineages. Their apparent ability to exploit diverse food sources, avoid numerous predators, and successfully reproduce in challenging environments indicates behavioral flexibility and learning capabilities that rival those seen in modern mammalian species. These cognitive abilities may have been crucial factors in their survival through the end Cretaceous extinction. The molecular evolutionary insights potentially derivable from well-preserved Hațeg Island mammalian fossils could provide unprecedented information about mammalian genetic evolution during the Cretaceous period. While ancient DNA extraction from such old fossils remains technically challenging, advances in paleogenomic techniques may eventually allow recovery of genetic information that could illuminate the molecular basis of mammalian evolutionary innovations. The developmental biology insights potentially available from juvenile mammalian specimens from Hațeg Island could provide important information about mammalian growth and development during the Cretaceous period. Understanding how these ancient mammals regulated growth rates, timing of developmental milestones, and physiological maturation could illuminate the evolutionary origins of mammalian developmental strategies and their relationship to ecological adaptation. The taphonomic conditions that preserved Hațeg Island's mammalian fossils provide natural experiments in fossilization processes that enhance our understanding of how small vertebrate remains are preserved and what types of information can be recovered from ancient mammalian communities. These preservation insights are crucial for interpreting mammalian fossil records from other time periods and geographic regions. The integration of mammalian fossil data with information from other Hațeg Island taxonomic groups creates opportunities for comprehensive ecosystem reconstructions that provide unprecedented insights into Cretaceous island ecology. Understanding how mammals interacted with dinosaurs, pterosaurs, crocodilians, and other reptilian groups illuminates ecological relationships that have no modern analogs and expands our understanding of how vertebrate communities function under different evolutionary and environmental constraints. The continuing discovery of new mammalian species from Hațeg Island demonstrates that our understanding of Cretaceous mammalian diversity remains incomplete and that significant discoveries await future research efforts. Each new species adds details to our understanding of mammalian ecological roles and evolutionary relationships. During this crucial period in mammalian evolutionary history, the educational value of Hațeg Island's mammalian fossils extends far beyond their scientific importance to provide compelling examples of evolutionary adaptation, survival strategies, and the importance of seemingly insignificant species in maintaining ecosystem stability. Their story offers powerful illustrations of evolutionary principles that can engage students and the general public in understanding the relevance of paleontological research to modern biological and environmental challenges. The technological innovations required to study these tiny mammalian fossils have driven advances in paleontological research methods that benefit the entire field. High-resolution imaging techniques, microsampling protocols, and analytical methods developed for studying small mammalian remains have applications throughout vertebrate paleontology and contribute to our ability to extract information from fossil specimens that would have been impossible to study using earlier techniques. The collaborative international research efforts required to fully understand Hațeg Island's mammalian communities have created scientific partnerships that extend far beyond this specific project. These collaborations have facilitated knowledge exchange, methodological development, and capacity building that enhance paleontological research capabilities globally and contribute to our collective ability to understand ancient life and evolutionary processes. The aquatic ecosystems of Hațeg Island supported an equally remarkable array of specialized creatures that had adapted to life in the island's seasonal waters. Among the most extraordinary were turtle relatives that had undergone dramatic evolutionary transformations, developing characteristics that set them apart from virtually every other turtle lineage known to science. These weren't typical pond turtles content with slow-paced aquatic lives. Instead, they had evolved into active, alert creatures with sensory systems finely tuned for terrestrial existence. Their skulls housed brains with enhanced visual processing centers and sophisticated auditory systems designed for detecting sounds in air rather than water. This neurological rewiring represented a fundamental shift in how these reptiles perceived and interacted with their environment. The three-dimensional reconstructions possible from exceptionally preserved skull fossils reveal creatures that would have seemed almost alien compared to modern turtle expectations. Their eye sockets were positioned and shaped to provide optimal vision across terrestrial landscapes rather than through aquatic environments. Their inner ear structures showed adaptations for processing airborne sound waves with remarkable precision, giving them acute awareness of approaching predators or potential prey moving through vegetation. But perhaps most remarkably, these turtle relatives appear to have developed complex social behaviors that allowed them to thrive in groups rather than as solitary individuals. Evidence suggests they may have lived in small communities, possibly cooperating in locating food sources or providing collective defense against the numerous predators that shared their island home. This social complexity would have been virtually unprecedented among turtle lineages and demonstrates just how far evolution can push even the most conservative animal groups when circumstances demand innovation. The feeding strategies of these terrestrial turtle relatives involve sophisticated behavioral adaptations that maximize their success in resource-limited environments. Rather than the opportunistic feeding typical of most turtle species, these creatures appear to have developed specialized hunting techniques that allowed them to exploit specific food sources with remarkable efficiency. Their jaw structure suggests they were capable of processing both plant and animal materials, giving them dietary flexibility that would have been crucial during seasonal fluctuations in food availability. The nesting behaviors of these social turtle relatives would have required careful coordination and possibly cooperative defense of breeding sites. With limited suitable nesting areas available on the island and numerous predators constantly threatening eggs and juveniles, successful reproduction would have demanded sophisticated behavioral strategies. Some evidence suggests that multiple females may have shared nesting areas, creating communal nurseries that provided enhanced protection for developing young through collective vigilance and defense. The seasonal migrations of these turtle relatives between terrestrial and aquatic habitats created dynamic population patterns across Hatzeg Island's landscape. During wet seasons, when temporary ponds were abundant, they could disperse widely across the island's diverse habitats. As dry seasons progressed and water sources became scarce, they would have been forced to concentrate around permanent water bodies, creating temporary communities that may have facilitated social interactions and mating opportunities. The amphibian communities of Hatzeg Island had evolved some of the most unusual characteristics ever documented in any amphibian lineage. These weren't typical salamanders or frogs struggling to survive in a reptile-dominated world. Instead, they were highly specialized creatures that had developed evolutionary innovations that challenged fundamental assumptions about what it means to be an amphibian. Their most striking feature was the intricate armor of tiny scales that covered their bodies like biological chainmail. These weren't superficial structures. They were sophisticated bony plates that formed beneath layers of skin, creating protective barriers that could deflect the attacks of small predators while maintaining the flexibility necessary for efficient movement. The manufacturing process that created these scales involved complex interactions between different tissue types and represented one of evolution's most elegant solutions to the challenge of combining protection with mobility. The neck flexibility of these armored amphibians was perhaps even more remarkable than their defensive adaptations. While most amphibians are notoriously rigid in their movements, these island species had evolved joint systems that allowed almost mammalian levels of mobility. This enhanced flexibility served multiple functions. It allowed them to navigate complex three-dimensional environments, provided advantages when hunting small prey in confined spaces, and may have been crucial for social interactions and communication behaviors. The microhabitats occupied by these specialized amphibians were incredibly diverse despite their small individual territories. Some species had adapted to life in the canopy, using their enhanced neck mobility to hunt insects among leaves and branches dozens of meters above the ground. Others specialized in subterranean environments, creating burrow systems that provided protection from both predators and seasonal climate variations. Still others occupied the interface between terrestrial and aquatic environments, exploiting resources that were unavailable to more specialized species. The hunting strategies employed by these armored amphibians involved sophisticated behavioral adaptations that maximized their success in competitive environments. Their enhanced mobility allowed them to pursue prey through complex terrain that would have been inaccessible to less flexible predators. Their protective scales provided confidence to hunt in relatively exposed locations where the risk of predation might have deterred less well-defended species. The reproductive ecology of these unusual amphibians required innovations that departed dramatically from typical amphibian strategies. Traditional amphibian reproduction is heavily dependent on aquatic environments for egg-laying and larval development. The seasonal water availability on Hațeg Island would have required timing reproductive activities to coincide with optimal conditions, possibly leading to synchronized breeding events that concentrated reproductive efforts during brief windows of opportunity. The social interactions among these armored amphibians may have been more complex than typically observed in modern amphibian communities. Their enhanced sensory capabilities and increased behavioral flexibility would have supported sophisticated communication systems and possibly even cooperative behaviors. Some species may have engaged in territorial defense, resource sharing, or collective predator avoidance strategies that enhanced their survival prospects in challenging island environments. The physiological adaptations required for maintaining active lifestyles while wearing biological armor would have involved significant innovations in cardiovascular and respiratory systems. The metabolic costs of producing and maintaining their scale armor, combined with the energy demands of enhanced mobility, would have required efficient physiological systems that could support higher activity levels than typical for amphibian lineages. The predator-prey relationships involving these armored amphibians created complex ecological dynamics that influenced the evolution of numerous other species. Their protective adaptations may have driven the evolution of more sophisticated hunting strategies among their predators, while their own predatory activities would have influenced the defensive strategies and habitat preferences of their prey species. These coevolutionary relationships contributed to the remarkable diversity and specialization observed throughout Hațeg Island's fauna. The sensory ecology of these amphibians involved adaptations that extended far beyond simple improvements in existing systems. Evidence suggests they may have evolved enhanced chemoreception capabilities that allowed them to detect and track prey or predators through complex chemical trails. Their auditory systems may have been sensitive to frequencies that were inaudible to other amphibian species, providing private communication channels that couldn't be intercepted by predators or competitors. The thermoregulatory challenges faced by armored amphibians in Hațeg Island's subtropical climate required behavioral and physiological solutions that may have been unique among amphibian lineages. Their scale armor would have influenced heat transfer and water loss, requiring sophisticated behavioral strategies for maintaining optimal body temperatures and hydration levels. Some species may have evolved behavioral thermoregulation strategies that involved precise timing of daily activities and careful selection of microhabitats with appropriate thermal characteristics. The evolutionary origins of these remarkable amphibian adaptations remain partially mysterious, but their presence on Hațeg Island suggests that island isolation provided the selective pressures necessary for such dramatic morphological innovations. The combination of limited space, intense competition, and reduced gene flow from mainland populations would have created conditions favoring rapid evolutionary change and the fixation of beneficial mutations that might have been lost in larger, more genetically diverse populations. The extinction patterns observed among Hațeg Island's amphibian communities provide insights into the vulnerability of highly specialized species to environmental change. While their remarkable adaptations allowed them to thrive in stable island conditions, their specialization may have reduced their ability to respond rapidly to the dramatic environmental changes associated with the end Cretaceous mass extinction. Their story illustrates the evolutionary trade-offs between short-term adaptive success and long-term evolutionary flexibility. The preservation of soft tissue details in some amphibian fossils from Hațeg Island provides unprecedented opportunities to study the biology of these extinct lineages. In rare cases, the original scale patterns have been preserved with sufficient detail to reconstruct their appearance in life. These exceptional preservation conditions allow scientists to understand not just the anatomy of these creatures, but aspects of their behavior and ecology that would be impossible to determine from bones alone. The biogeographical relationships of Hațeg Island's amphibian fauna reveal complex patterns of dispersal and evolution that illuminate amphibian evolutionary history during the Cretaceous period. Some lineages appear to have been endemic to the island, while others show relationships to forms found elsewhere in the European archipelago or even on other continents. These biogeographical patterns provide insights into how amphibian communities responded to the changing continental configurations and sea level fluctuations that characterized the Cretaceous world. The ecological roles filled by these specialized amphibians were crucial for maintaining ecosystem stability and function on Hațeg Island. As predators of small invertebrates, they helped control arthropod populations and maintained the balance between primary producers and herbivorous insects. As prey for larger predators, they provided essential food resources that supported higher trophic levels. Their activities as ecosystem engineers through burrowing and other habitat modifications created environmental heterogeneity that benefited numerous other species. The lizard communities that thrived alongside these remarkable amphibians were themselves examples of evolutionary innovation and ecological specialization. Multiple species coexisted within Hațeg Island's limited area, each having carved out distinct ecological niches that minimized direct competition while maximizing resource utilization efficiency. This high level of species packing demonstrates the remarkable diversity that can evolve within constrained island environments when sufficient time and appropriate selective pressures are available. The jaw morphology of different lizard species reveals sophisticated feeding specializations that allowed them to exploit different food resources with minimal overlap. Some species evolved robust jaw muscles and reinforced skull structures that could generate tremendous bite forces for crushing hard-bodied prey items. Others developed more delicate feeding apparatus designed for capturing and processing small, soft-bodied invertebrates with precision and efficiency. The habitat preferences of different lizard species created vertical and horizontal partitioning of the island's resources that maximized community diversity while maintaining ecological stability. Some species specialized in arboreal environments, developing enhanced climbing abilities and adaptations for life in the forest canopy. Others focused on terrestrial habitats, evolving efficient locomotion for hunting across varied ground surfaces. Still others occupied semi-aquatic niches, developing capabilities for exploiting both terrestrial and aquatic food sources. The reproductive strategies of these lizard communities involved timing and behavioral adaptations that maximized breeding success in the island's seasonal environment. Evidence suggests that different species may have evolved distinct breeding seasons that reduced competition for nesting sites and optimal conditions for egg development. Some species may have developed enhanced parental care behaviors that improved offspring survival in environments where juvenile mortality was undoubtedly high. The predator avoidance strategies employed by Hațeg Island's lizards involved both morphological and behavioral adaptations that reduced their vulnerability to the diverse array of predators sharing their habitat. Some species evolved cryptic coloration and behavior patterns that made them nearly invisible to visual predators. Others developed enhanced speed and agility that allowed them to escape from pursuing predators through rapid flight to protected microhabitats. The social behaviors of some lizard species may have been more complex than typically observed in modern lizard communities. Evidence suggests that certain species may have engaged in territorial defense, cooperative predator detection, or even resource-sharing behaviors that enhance their survival prospects. These social adaptations would have been particularly valuable in environments where individual survival was challenging and where cooperation could provide significant advantages. The physiological adaptations of Hațeg Island's lizards to the subtropical island climate involve sophisticated mechanisms for maintaining optimal body temperatures and managing water balance. Their small size would have made them particularly susceptible to rapid temperature fluctuations and dehydration, requiring behavioral and physiological strategies that could maintain homeostasis across varying environmental conditions. The coevolutionary relationships between lizard communities and their prey created dynamic feedback systems that influenced the evolution of both predator and prey lineages. As arthropod prey evolved better defensive strategies, lizard predators responded with enhanced hunting capabilities and feeding specializations. These evolutionary arms races contributed to the remarkable diversity and sophistication observed in both lizard and invertebrate communities. The impact of lizard predation on Hațeg Island's arthropod communities would have been significant despite the small size of individual lizards. The high diversity and abundance of lizard species would have created intense predation pressure on insect and other invertebrate populations, potentially influencing their evolution, behavior, and ecological strategies. This top-down control may have been crucial for maintaining the balance between plant productivity and herbivorous insect consumption. The seasonal activity patterns of different lizard species created temporal partitioning of resources that reduced competition while maximizing resource utilization efficiency. Some species may have been primarily active during cooler morning and evening periods, while others specialized in exploiting resources during the heat of midday, when competition from temperature-sensitive species was reduced. These temporal niches allowed more species to coexist within the island's limited area. The thermoregulatory behaviors of Hațeg Island's lizards would have been crucial for maintaining optimal performance in the island's variable thermal environment. Different species may have evolved distinct behavioral thermoregulation strategies, with some relying on behavioral shuttling between sun and shade, while others developed physiological adaptations that reduced their dependence on external heat sources. The dispersal abilities of different lizard species would have been important factors determining their distribution patterns across Hațeg Island's diverse habitats. Some species may have been capable of long-distance movement between suitable habitat patches, while others may have been restricted to small territories with specific microhabitat requirements. These dispersal capabilities would have influenced population structure, genetic diversity, and vulnerability to local environmental disturbances. The evolutionary relationships among Hațeg Island's lizard fauna reveal patterns of adaptive radiation and ecological diversification that illuminate lizard evolutionary history. During the Cretaceous period, multiple lineages appear to have colonized the island and subsequently diverged into species adapted to different ecological roles. This evolutionary diversification demonstrates the remarkable potential for rapid speciation and ecological specialization within lizard lineages, when appropriate selective pressures and ecological opportunities are available. The preservation quality of lizard fossils from Hațeg Island varies considerably, with some specimens providing detailed anatomical information, while others preserve only fragmentary remains. The challenges involved in interpreting these fossil materials require sophisticated analytical techniques and careful comparison with modern lizard anatomy and ecology. Despite these challenges, the accumulated evidence provides valuable insights into lizard community structure and ecological relationships during the Cretaceous period. The modern analytical techniques applied to Hațeg Island lizard fossils continue to reveal new information about their biology and ecological roles. High-resolution imaging allows examination of bone microstructure and tooth morphology that provides insights into growth rates, diet, and behavior. Chemical analyses can reveal information about habitat preferences and trophic relationships that complement morphological data. The implications of lizard community structure on Hațeg Island extend beyond paleontology to provide insights into how modern lizard communities respond to environmental constraints and ecological opportunities. Understanding how ancient lizard species partitioned resources and coexisted in limited island environments provides valuable perspectives for conservation biology and ecosystem management in modern island and fragmented habitats. The educational value of Hațeg Island's lizard fossils lies in their ability to demonstrate principles of community ecology, adaptive radiation, and evolutionary specialization, using concrete examples from the fossil record. Their diversity and ecological relationships provide compelling illustrations of how evolution generates biological diversity and how ecological communities are structured and maintained over long time periods. The continuing discovery of new lizard species from Hațeg Island demonstrates that our understanding of Cretaceous lizard diversity remains incomplete and that significant discoveries await future research efforts. Each new species adds details to our understanding of lizard evolutionary history and ecological relationships during this important period in reptilian evolution. The integration of lizard fossil data with information from other Hațeg Island taxonomic groups creates opportunities for comprehensive ecosystem reconstructions that illuminate the complex ecological relationships that characterized this ancient island community. Understanding how lizards interacted with dinosaurs, mammals, amphibians, and other vertebrate groups provides insights into community assembly processes and ecological dynamics that have no modern parallels. The conservation lessons derivable from Hațeg Island's lizard communities are increasingly relevant in our modern world of habitat fragmentation and environmental change. Understanding how these ancient lizard communities maintained high diversity and ecological stability in constrained island environments may provide guidance for managing modern lizard populations, facing similar challenges in fragmented landscapes and changing climates. The story of Hațeg Island reaches its most poignant chapter as we witness the twilight of this extraordinary evolutionary experiment. For millions of years, this isolated paradise had sustained one of the most remarkable ecosystems our planet has ever known. But even the most successful evolutionary innovations cannot withstand the forces of global catastrophe when they arrive with sudden, overwhelming intensity. The end came not gradually, but in a geological instant that forever changed the trajectory of life on Earth. 66 million years ago, the end Cretaceous mass extinction event swept across our planet like an unstoppable tide of destruction, and the unique world of Hațeg Island could not escape its devastating reach. The very isolation that had protected this ecosystem for so long, allowing its inhabitants to evolve their remarkable specializations, now became a vulnerability that sealed their fate. Picture the final days of this ancient world when the skies that had been dominated by giant pterosaurs for millions of years fell silent forever. The massive aerial predators with their 10-meter wingspans, creatures that had ruled their domain with unmatched majesty, simply vanished from existence. Their hollow bones, so perfectly engineered for flight, could not protect them from the global environmental collapse that made their sophisticated aerial lifestyle impossible to maintain. The miniaturized dinosaurs that had grazed peacefully in fern-covered clearings for countless generations faced challenges that no amount of evolutionary adaptation could overcome. These creatures, so perfectly sized for their island world, so efficiently adapted to its limited resources, found themselves in an environment where the very foundations of their ecosystem were crumbling. The plants they depended on withered and died. The carefully balanced food webs that had sustained them for millions of years collapsed entirely. The herbivorous dinosaurs, with their powerful jaws so expertly designed for processing tough island vegetation, watched helplessly as their food sources disappeared. The carnivorous dinosaurs that had evolved such sophisticated hunting strategies found themselves with nothing left to hunt. Even the most adaptable species, those that had survived countless smaller environmental challenges throughout their evolutionary history, could not cope with changes this rapid and this complete. The terrestrial crocodilians that had achieved such remarkable innovations in land-based living also succumbed to the global catastrophe. Their enlarged sinuses and powerful limbs, their sophisticated hunting strategies and territorial behaviors all proved insufficient when faced with environmental changes that exceeded any challenge their lineage had ever encountered. These creatures had pushed crocodilian evolution to its absolute limits, creating lifestyles that seemed impossible by modern standards, yet they, too, joined the growing list of casualties. The giant pterosaurs suffered perhaps the most dramatic fall from dominance. These aerial titans had represented the pinnacle of flying reptile evolution, creatures so large and sophisticated that they seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Their massive skulls, their powerful necks, their hollow bone construction that allowed such enormous animals to achieve powered flight. All of these remarkable adaptations became evolutionary dead ends when the environmental catastrophe made their lifestyle unsustainable. But amidst this overwhelming devastation, not every inhabitant of Hatzeg Island perished in the global catastrophe. The tiny mammals with their iron-reinforced teeth, those seemingly insignificant creatures that had lived in the shadows of giants for millions of years, possessed characteristics that would prove to be their salvation. Their small size, their dietary flexibility, their ability to exploit protected microhabitats, these adaptations that had evolved for island life proved perfectly suited for surviving global environmental collapse. When the dust settled and the immediate effects of the extinction event began to fade, these mammalian survivors found themselves in a world transformed beyond recognition. the giant reptiles that had dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 150 million years were gone forever. The aerial realm, once ruled by pterosaurs of incredible size and sophistication, stood empty and available for new colonizers. The ecological niches that had been filled by specialized dinosaurs and other reptiles were suddenly vacant, waiting for new occupants. The success story of these surviving mammals demonstrates one of evolution's most important principles, that long-term survival often depends more on adaptability than on apparent dominance. The characteristics that had allowed these tiny creatures to thrive in the constrained environment of Hațeg Island, their small size, their omnivorous feeding strategies, their sophisticated reproductive behaviors, their physiological resilience, proved to be exactly the traits needed for surviving and thriving in the dramatically altered post-extinction world. As environmental conditions stabilized in the aftermath of the mass extinction, these mammalian survivors began to expand their populations and extend their geographic ranges. When changing sea levels and continental drift eventually reconnected Hațeg Island to the European mainland, these resilient species spread rapidly across the continent. Their specialized adaptations, originally evolved for island life, proved remarkably successful in the diverse mainland environments they encountered. The evolutionary radiation that followed represents one of the most spectacular success stories in the history of life on Earth. Within just a few million years, the descendants of Hațeg Island's tiny mammals had diversified into a remarkable array of species that filled ecological roles previously occupied by their reptilian predecessors. Some evolved into large herbivores that took over the grazing niches once filled by dinosaurs. Others became sophisticated predators that assumed the hunting roles previously held by carnivorous dinosaurs. The longevity of these mammalian lineages following their expansion from Hațeg Island is truly remarkable. Many groups continued to thrive and diversify for millions of years after the Cretaceous extinction, only finally disappearing during subsequent environmental changes and evolutionary transitions that occurred much later in Earth's history. Some lineages persisted for over 10 million years, spreading across entire continents and adapting to environments that would have been unimaginable to their island ancestors. This extended success demonstrates that the evolutionary innovations developed under the unique selective pressures of island life provided advantages that extended far beyond their original context. The behavioral flexibility, physiological efficiency, and ecological adaptability that had evolved in response to island constraints proved to be valuable assets in the rapidly changing post-extinction world, where survival required the ability to exploit new opportunities and adapt to novel challenges. The modern analytical techniques now being applied to Hațeg Island fossils continue to reveal new details about this remarkable evolutionary story. Advanced imaging technologies allow scientists to examine the internal structure of fossilized bones, revealing information about growth rates, metabolism, and life history strategies that helps explain why some lineages survived while others perished. Chemical analyses provide insights into ancient diets, environmental conditions, and ecological relationships that illuminate the factors that determine survival during the mass extinction event. The lessons we can learn from Hațeg Island extend far beyond academic paleontology to provide crucial insights for understanding and managing biodiversity in our modern world. The island story demonstrates how geographic isolation can drive remarkable evolutionary innovation, creating unique species and ecological relationships found nowhere else on Earth. It also shows how even the most successful evolutionary adaptations can become vulnerabilities when environmental conditions change rapidly and dramatically. The conservation implications of Hațeg Island's story are particularly relevant in our current era of habitat fragmentation and climate change. Many modern ecosystems exist as isolated islands of habitat surrounded by human-modified landscapes, creating conditions that parallel the geographic isolation that shaped evolution on ancient Hațeg Island. Understanding how island ecosystems develop, function, and respond to environmental change provides valuable guidance for managing these fragmented habitats and protecting their unique biodiversity. The research techniques developed for studying Hațeg Island fossils have advanced our ability to extract information from fossil specimens that would have been impossible to obtain using earlier methods. High-resolution CT scanning reveals internal bone structure with unprecedented detail. Sophisticated chemical analyses provide insights into ancient diets, environments, and physiological processes. Three-dimensional reconstruction techniques allow scientists to understand how extinct animals moved, behaved, and interacted with their environments. The international collaborative efforts required to fully understand Hațeg Island's paleontological treasures have created research partnerships that extend far beyond this specific project. Scientists from around the world contribute their expertise to studying different aspects of the island's evolutionary story, sharing techniques, insights, and discoveries that advance our collective understanding of ancient life and evolutionary processes. The educational value of Hațeg Island's fossils extends to students and educators at all levels, providing compelling examples of evolutionary principles, ecological relationships, and the importance of biodiversity conservation. The island's story offers concrete illustrations of abstract concepts like adaptive radiation, insular dwarfism, and mass extinction that make these scientific principles accessible and engaging to diverse audiences. The preservation of Hațeg Island fossil sites represents an ongoing challenge that requires cooperation between scientists, local communities, and government agencies. These irreplaceable scientific resources contain millions of years of evolutionary history that, once damaged or destroyed, can never be replaced. Protecting these sites while allowing continued research requires careful management and long-term planning that balances scientific needs with conservation priorities. The future research potential of Hațeg Island remains enormous, with new analytical techniques and technologies continuing to reveal previously hidden aspects of this ancient ecosystem. Emerging methods in paleogenomics may eventually allow recovery of genetic information from well-preserved specimens. Advanced biomechanical modeling could provide new insights into how extinct animals moved and behaved. Sophisticated geochemical analyses might reveal details about ancient climate and environmental conditions with unprecedented precision. The story of Hatzeg Island serves as a powerful reminder of both the creative potential of evolution and the vulnerability of even the most successful evolutionary innovations to rapid environmental change. In an isolated corner of the ancient world, evolution conducted one of its most remarkable experiments, creating an ecosystem unlike anything that exists today. The miniaturized dinosaurs, giant pterosaurs, terrestrial crocodilians, iron-toothed mammals, and countless other unique creatures that called this island home represent the incredible diversity that life can achieve when given the right conditions and sufficient time. Yet their story also reminds us that no evolutionary success is permanent, that even the most sophisticated adaptations can become liabilities when environmental conditions change beyond certain thresholds. The mass extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs was not selective based on evolutionary sophistication or apparent dominance. It was an environmental catastrophe that rewarded characteristics like small size, dietary flexibility, and physiological resilience regardless of the evolutionary lineage that possessed them. The survivors of Hatzeg Island's evolutionary experiment, those tiny mammals that emerged from the shadows of giants to inherit a transformed world, demonstrate that evolutionary success is often determined by adaptability rather than specialization. Their story shows us that the characteristics that ensure survival during times of stability may be different from those that ensure survival during times of rapid change, and that the most successful evolutionary strategies are those that maintain flexibility while achieving efficiency. As we face our own era of rapid environmental change and biodiversity loss, the lessons from Hatzeg Island become increasingly relevant and urgent. The island story teaches us about the value of preserving isolated habitats and protecting the unique evolutionary experiments they contain. It shows us how quickly even the most stable ecosystems can collapse when faced with environmental changes that exceed their adaptive capacity. Most importantly, it demonstrates that the small, seemingly insignificant species that we often overlook may be the ones that ultimately inherit the future. The legacy of Hatzeg Island lives on in the fossil collections housed in museums around the world, in the scientific papers that continue to reveal new aspects of its evolutionary story, and in the ongoing research efforts that use its fossils to understand fundamental principles of evolution and ecology. Each specimen represents a piece of a larger puzzle, a fragment of an evolutionary experiment that continues to teach us about the creative power of natural selection and the remarkable resilience of life in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. Every time we walk through the gentle hills of Romania's Hatzeg Basin, we are walking through the remnants of one of evolution's greatest achievements. The rocks beneath our feet contain the fossilized remains of creatures that once thrived in a world so different from our own that it seems almost mythical. Yet these fossils are real, tangible evidence of life's incredible ability to adapt, innovate, and create beauty and complexity even under the most challenging conditions. The story of Hatzeg Island is ultimately a story about us, about the planet we inhabit, the evolutionary processes that created the diversity of life we see around us, and the environmental challenges that all life must face. It reminds us that we are part of an ongoing evolutionary experiment, that the species we share our planet with today are the products of millions of years of adaptation and innovation, and that our actions today will influence the trajectory of evolution for millions of years to come. In the end, Hațeg Island stands as a testament to the remarkable creativity of evolution and the precious nature of the biodiversity that surrounds us. Its fossils preserve not just the remains of extinct animals, but the memory of an entire world, a world where giants became miniatures, where evolution rewrote the rules of size and ecology,